That's yours.
Oh.
That's yours.
Heard nothing but-
Also.
Oh.
Meeting is 9 o'clock. If you join us, please for the pledge of allegiance. It's 7 o'clock. It's 1900. If you'll join us for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's see who's here.
Councilmember Davis. Here. Councilmember Cortez.
Present.
Deputy Mayor DeRosa. Here. Mayor Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Bowman.
Yes.
Councilmember McCoy.
Here.
Councilmember Walters.
Here.
The roll has been called.
Thank you. Are there any additions or subtractions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add to the agenda after the ordinance, if that passes, that we convene the TBD board at that time for consideration of project. For to possibly direct staff to come back with a budget resolution.
Okay. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I too would like to propose an addition to speak about just in general, a homeless ordinance that has come out of Spokane Valley to be at the end of the meeting before the administrative reports. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. So that's where we are. Then we'll move on now to the summary reports. Let me turn mine. Is there anyone? Yes. Yes, sir. Mr. Cortez, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I have is we had, the RTC board had a special meeting this past Thursday. And actually, I thought it was gonna go a lot faster than it actually did, but thanks to people playing politics, I guess it lasts a little bit longer. The board approved the locally preferred alternative for the I-5 bridge project. And basically all that really means is we're moving forward. Still have lots of things we have to examine, and it's definitely not the final say-all for that project. There will be another final vote on that project with that particular board. So, but at least we're moving forward in that progress. So that's all I have to say.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, usually I would do this under for good of the order, but our last meeting for good of the order came at 11:45 and most of them were gone. So I would just ask if you would allow me to. This last week, we had harvest days last weekend. It's been like the last 3 weeks we've had harvest days in my mind and in Mr. Insiga's mind out there. But I just wanted to publicly thank right now. I would like to thank the city and the role that they played in making sure that that was a good event. I can't remember how many people were in the room. 2 days before harvest days, but it's every one of these people that are sitting in here right now that are in front of us for department heads and quite a few more. It's quite a task to put this type of an event on. And I know that, that there's a lot of pressure because of it being a community event. You hate to hold things up and slow things down. And the city did a really good job of working with us and the Battleground Festivals Association, which is Mr. Insinga and Kendra Larada and myself, in getting that done. But on that, if we could, you know, Ms. Erdman, if you could let your employees know, because I don't want to start naming them. There's a lot that we appreciate the help that they gave, the time that they took to do that. We had a lot of volunteers. Want to publicly thank the volunteers. I think probably total, I was kind of doing some numbers in my head. We probably had somewhere over the weekend close to 1,000 to 1,500 hours of volunteer service, maybe even more than that. Which, you know, if you follow Facebook much, there's a lot of people that have opinions on how to do things, and they sure don't show up to our volunteer meetings that we have. And we would love for more people to show up and participate in that. And I know this year the mayor got to participate in a couple different areas that were maybe a little bit overwhelming and hectic, and so it is quite a thing to put on. Councilmember McCoy also was there all weekend helping, shutting down roads, picking up garbage, doing all the stuff that we had to do. I wanted to thank Fire District 3. They did a phenomenal job, and especially Mr. Drone. I know that was a hectic week trying to, I think 3 days before we found out we were going to have a carnival, which that in itself is a logistic nightmare. He has to do the inspections of it. L&I has to do the inspections of it. We had a car go through Margarita Factory, which was right next to the event. And this is a big weekend for them, and having to deal with that and making sure they could get back up and running. And I know every one of our staff were involved in that and did a phenomenal job making sure that business could get up and running. But in total, just real quick, going over what we had a cruise on Friday night. Over 280 vehicles were there in the cruise itself. We thought it was a little bit more, but then we started doing some number crunching, and back when we had 400, we used to have to park them clear up in Louisville, and we didn't this year. But we had 280 vehicles. We had over 600. We had 660 to be exact, kids or adults that participated in the wristbands and going to the bounce houses this year. That was a big thing for them. The carnival, John, we had roughly 100 parade entrants.
Yes, 92.
92 parade entrants, and that went really well. Roughly 100 plus lowriders at the lowrider show.
202.
202. Oh, okay, roughly double what I said.
It was
So-
all rough.
at
Rough
the
numbers.
at the lowrider show, and that turned out really good. We had the BMX bike show down at the skate park, and that was huge. I didn't get the chance to go down there. The mayor did, said it was pretty impressive. I wish I would have had a little bit more time to get down there. And then over 60 vendors showed up for the vendor fair. And then Saturday night, Western Display put on the fireworks show, and it was hard to get a count. We don't know how you get a count of that. There was a lot of people. When Chief called me and said he was up at Chief Umtush, and the parking lot was getting full up there, and the sprinklers went on in the middle of it, and it was hosing people down. We had quite a few at the high school. We had a lot that overflowed into the Dick's in that kind of area. I don't understand. I mean, me and Mr. McCoy were at a barricade there right at the 400-foot mark, and I don't know why you want to be at 400 feet, because we got hit with a lot of stuff, and you're looking up, and so it's all going in your face. But for some reason, everybody wanted to be as close to 400 feet as they could get. But we had a lot of positive response from that, and for the first time ever, we haven't had to do any PR against those that were negative. The people in town took care of it for us. And that was a big hit, and appreciate the fire district making sure that went off. And it will probably be something that we continue to do from the response that we got from it. But I just want to thank all the participation we had, the help that we had from council and the city. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? I will say I went to the BMX and it was old guys and old girls reliving their 1960s and 1970s banana tail bicycles and all kinds of other things. There was a 1980 something, you'll forgive me, original Star Wars themed bike that this guy had, that he had gotten as a child and had kept it just incredible. Original tires, the whole deal. And they made him an offer of like 50 grand and he just chuckled and put it in the back of his truck and moved on. So they're coming next year and you should go look because there really are. They're just a lot of cool bikes up there. Moving on, mayor's report. I went to the C-Tran meeting, the bus company this past week. The bus company again was chosen as the 2022 North American Public Transit Association System of their size award winner. So they beat out the Canadians, they beat out the Mexicans, and they beat out everyone else in the other 49 states. So they've done a really nice job. They've won it now twice in 3 years, which hasn't ever been done. So for all the bad press that the bus company gets, they obviously are doing something right. Which brings us to the second part of the bus company deal. There's a reorganization going on as far as representation on the board of directors for the bus company up in Pierce County. Over the last year or two, a minority took over the Pierce County transportation system somehow, minority representation, ticked off some legislator up there and he ran it through the legislature for change. Well, the change for us is kind of massive. It's done per capita. Small cities, as we are now, we hold roughly 4 of the positions. The county holds 2 and Vancouver holds 3. If you go per capita, the new system would be Vancouver should hold 4, perhaps 5. The county should hold 3. And then the small city should hold 1.5. So sometime in the coming month, the board will meet and we'll sort out what in my estimation is going to happen is there will be 4 Vancouver people there, 3 Clark County people there. There will be a North County small cities representation, and there will be a South County.
East County.
Southeast County. Camas Washougal. So it'll be Camas Washougal, it'll be us, Ridgefield, Yakult, and La Center. And that looks to be the only fair way to do it. There may be a vote just to stay as it is and see if someone complains. And then if so, then if someone complains, then it's fought out in court. But the problem, of course, with all of that is when you have 4 Vancouver representatives at a C-Tran meeting, you have a Vancouver City Council meeting. And when you have 3 county representatives at a C-Tran meeting, you have a Clark County Council meeting. So it makes it very hard to run the bus company.
Mr. Mayor, on that, have they looked at, because in the county, I understand that the county as a whole has a population base that would give them 3 seats, but as the county as a service area,
They
would
still
have-
run 3 seats. Yes,
even though it only services
we have
Santa
done,
Creek, Hazel.
we've done the map 3 or 4 different ways from Sunday, and they still hold that number. Yeah. So if the law is followed, it'll be 4, 3, and 2. And if we just kind of go, okay, fine, whatever happens, happens, it will remain the same. But chances are it'll be 4, 3, and 2. We'll bring that probably back for a vote of this council sometime in October. So that's where we go on that. Is there anything else before we move on? Okay, seeing none. And we're back to you, Ms. Urban, with the start of the presentations.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. We have a couple of presentations tonight. We're going to start with Deacon Development. We've been working on the West Main Commons Development Agreement that was approved last meeting. I believe the ordinance for that will be coming forward on August 1st. And this is a follow-up to that about considering the multifamily tax exemption program. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Deacon and pull up his presentation.
Good evening. Is it working?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you again. We're here to talk about the project that we're conceiving. We call it West Main Commons. And we really think that this would be an exciting project that would be a great benefit for the city as well as our company. The negotiation of the development agreement with your staff has shown us that there's a good ability for the two teams to work together. It's been a good collegial process, and I think one that's been fair from both sides' perspectives. We're excited about the project and hope this discussion will pave the way to allow us to proceed with the project. So try this. These are the 3 points that we're planning to talk with you about this evening. And each of the slides will have a number on it to follow along. First of all, just as a reminder and an overview, we think this is going to be just a beautiful and dynamic addition to the city. We've designed the project in accordance with the guidelines from your new RC zone, which is really kind of a nice combination of an urban feel with a mixed use project. I think this project could be a good example of what can be done with the RC zone, or at least we think it would be. You'll see in a little bit here, but the project would include almost 25% open space. And it's part of it's covered up by that thing on the right there, but on the south end of the project, there would be almost a 1/4 acre park available. And that's also the area where our storm pond would go. That's not part of the park, but there would be side by side there. But overall on the project, it'd be approximately 25% open area when you look at plazas, landscape areas, park, etc. Okay, so these 2 slides, the one on the bottom indicates what a park, it's just a typical park. And our vision for the park would be that it would have the typical playground, open area, barbecue area, etc. For people to use. We went out and paced out the size of this park area out in our parking lot at our building, and it's big. I think it would be a very robust, nice area. It's not going to be like the size of this room here. It's going to be large. The center boulevard down the residential, what you see on the top there, that's the residential area. And what's changed since we did this rendering, but we didn't change on the rendering, is that center boulevard would be a pedestrian boulevard now and not a driving boulevard, which I think would really be a nice change. The firefighting would be handled from the outsides of the buildings as opposed to having to go down the center boulevard. So the center boulevard could be left open for things like, well, you can just picture all of them, planters and meeting areas and bocce ball and pickleball or whatever you want to do out there. The pedestrian plazas would be sprinkled throughout both the residential and the commercial developments. And we would include areas where you could have outdoor eating or just outdoor walking space. And the idea is, and I want to mention that the commercial, a lot of the talk about the project is on the residential side, but the project includes 36,000 square feet of new commercial space that would be focused right on West Main and then the boulevard coming in. We have purposely oriented the buildings toward West Main or the center boulevard coming through the project, with the exception of one building, and that's for visibility. And I think that that'll be a nice feeling when you're driving in. You'll see the buildings. You won't see a big parking lot. The parking will be mostly behind the buildings instead of in front of the buildings. At the same time, and this, hand it to our architect, their job is to make the buildings face the street and be welcoming, but also be welcoming to pedestrians. And so we've really tried to think through how to lay it out and have crosswalks and so on that are pedestrian, walking friendly, bike friendly, and obviously you have to have cars in there too. And trying to get all three of those coordinated. The residential part of the project is, at least for right now, is about 220 market rate apartments. And they would include studio, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. If we can work out something with you on the MFTE, we would also have affordable units built into the mix. And that's what our goal is. The next segment here is regarding the MFTE. And I want to remind us all that the MFTE would apply to the vertical construction of the residential only. So all of the commercial property and its improvements would be subject to the full property tax. The land underneath the residential would be subject to the property tax, but the vertical construction and probably the underground improvements, but basically the improvements on the residential is what would fall under the MFTE program. MFTE is really very important for our financial planning, and we're realizing it more and more as the cost of construction goes up, feels like every week. This is a very important part of the program for us. What we're requesting that you consider is a project-specific 8-year program. And we in turn would make, even though the state code doesn't require this, we would make 10% of our units affordable under the 8-year program. Next, I want to talk about, I know there's been considerable concern on your perspective, on behalf of the fire department and the school district. And we thought about how do we deal with that. And what we've decided to offer to the MFT program is a $300,000 grant that could be shared by the fire department and the school district. If we can work out something on this MFTE program. I don't know the right way to share it, and it doesn't really matter, but I think it would be hopefully a gesture of goodwill to help offset some of the concerns that the council has about those two departments. Just as a reminder, these are some of the numbers that this project would generate. And these are the numbers that the city of Battleground would see. This isn't the total amount. This is to the best of our ability to analyze And Ian's done a lot of work trying to figure out the sharing, and we think we got it close, but the sales tax generated during the construction is 1.7. It says 1.77 million. The commercial sales tax over 20 years would be a little over 2 million. The property tax, and this is net of the abatement, over the 20 years would be 1.2 million. The building permits would be about 400,000. And then the systems development charges would be about 3.5 million. And out of that 3.5 million, the parks get 580,000, the schools get 500,000, the fire department gets 65,000. So there's a good, I mean, there's a lot of money through the SDCs that go back into some of your departments that are so important to making sure the city operates well. And then if you're really a nerd for numbers, here's some more. This is the breakdown of the open and active space that I mentioned before, the 25%. I won't get into the details there, but it does show by area the amount of open space that's in the plan right now. So with that, I would welcome any questions you have, but would ask that you give serious consideration to the proposal.
Before we start with the questions, would you go back to the first slide, please, sir?
Sure.
The one that had
The site plan?
yes, sir.
Here we go.
And we'll start with Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question on the affordable apartments.
Yeah.
What break on market rate would those be?
Those would be at 80% of MFI.
Okay, so is it the qualification? Oh, I misunderstood. I thought it was 80% of the median wage qualified you for it, but it's 80% of the market rate.
No, 80% of the median family income.
That's what qualifies you for the apartment, right? I'm asking how much would the apartments cost compared to the market rate?
Yeah, that's what it's based on. It's based on that income, and then you back into use 30% of a person's income should go toward housing. And then that determines the.
So
the
it depends on
amounts.
their income, what they're, gotcha. So there's a formula for
Yeah,
the
hold on a
apartments. Okay.
second here. Ian, you want to explain this better?
Well, come on up. Let's try it again.
Yeah, so the rates are set by HUD. I believe they set them every July 1st. So they're predetermined rates, as Steve said, based on 30% of the median family income at an 80% rate for that area. So to qualify for the unit, you have to have an income below 80% of that area's median family income. And then the rate is set by HUD. And typically that's 30% of their income at that 80%.
Gotcha. So each family may have a different rent based on their income. They're not necessarily set for the whole project.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. McCoy hit on one of the questions. I'll tell you what my issue is I looked through this and we got the Johnson Economics, 300-page report, and which I'm fine. I get that 100%. If I'm paying them to crank out a report, they're going to crank out a report that's going to be pretty favorable to the project that I'm putting together, because I've done the work to put that together. Told them what I want. They kind of mold that, and they're going to tell us, these are the amount of jobs that are going to be created there. This is the amount of money you're going to save. This is, or generate. These are the tax dollars that are going to be spent there. My issue is this, if we look at housing just as housing, and I understand that the MFTE only applies to apartments or complexes like that. It doesn't apply to single family homes. But we had Mr. Hewitt in here developing the subdivision up by Daybreak. And how many homes are in that subdivision, Ms. Erdman? Okay, 200 homes when we add them all together. So when we take 200 homes, and I could take this same thing from Johnson Economics and show the impacts of 200 homes in our community and the tax base and the average, how many people we have living in those homes, and the value that they're going to bring to the city, because they're going to shop here, they're going to work here, they're going to do that stuff, they're going to pay their taxes here, and I can show that it's going to be millions of dollars. The tax revenue that we're going to receive as they build those is going to be similar to the project that you're building, as far as square footage and all that stuff is probably going to be fairly close. Their impact fees are going to be fairly close. My issue with it is they get no breaks, but we're going to give this development a break for 8 years of no taxes. And the problem I have with that, and I know I said this before, I know it's a state ran, I don't know, tax loophole, if you want to call it that. I don't know how we as a council would be severely upset if the school district did the same thing to us and said, oh, by the way, you're not gonna be able to collect taxes on this area because we said no. That would, and I appreciate you putting a grant together, but $300,000, a ladder truck costs $1.2 million now. To split that between the school district, they're when you look at their budget and what they have to maintain, it's huge. That's peanuts to them. And it would really do nothing but maybe mow the lawn at one school for half a year. So I hate the fact that the other taxpayers are subsidizing it, because they're having to pick that up. Because when we run a bond, when the school district runs a bond, that bond number has to be paid for. And so it doesn't matter if it's two tax parcels or it's 2,200 tax parcels, that bond's going to be paid for. And when you take these people out of that and they're not paying for it, it just, to me, it does not make sense. I like the project. I think the project's a phenomenal project. I like where you guys are going with it. I just don't like giving away the tax money, because that's 8 years of, we saw it similar. We didn't give it away. We saw it similar with Mr. Fontenette and Walmart. Everyone thought when Walmart came to town, we were making all this money. No, we weren't, because the deal with that was all those tax revenues were going to pay for the road that we bonded to put in there. And he had to cover a portion of that until it met, until it met his portion with the retail establishments that were in there. And so, I have no problem looking at that kind of stuff, but I just hate giving, I think it was Mr. McCoy that said that it's not a, what'd you say? It's not tax diversion, it's tax forgiveness or something to that. So I don't like that portion of it, but I like everything else you're doing. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Walters, please.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for coming in. As far as parking goes, do you have that designed at the moment at the 1.5 per household still?
We
Is
do.
that, and do you feel like that with businesses being in there, do you feel that 1.5 is going to be enough for that type of layout?
Oh, I think it will. The national, or not, or I shouldn't say national, the regional trend that we're seeing is compared to the studies that have been done in the past, there's fewer cars per household than there used to be. People are more and more often, like I know several people in our office now that have cut down to a 1-car household between husband and wife. The use of Uber, Lyft has made a difference. And the ability to work from home as opposed to driving into the office each day. So yeah, we're not seeing the trend. We're seeing the trend
Out
go-
here though, out here in this area where,
Well, I'm not going to say battleground specifically because I can't tell you about battleground, but I can tell you that in general, the trends for parking, and I'm not talking about urban like downtown, because we do a lot of developing in smaller outer lying communities, and we're still following the code, but we're not seeing a need for bigger parking lots. We're seeing, if anything, a little bit less.
That's kind of what concerns me because I do know that 1.5 is not enough in an apartment complex. I know that that's something that we as a city need to work on getting changed, but 1.5 is not enough. We already at just about every single apartment complex in this area, there are cars overflowing onto the street. And specifically in that area, there's only one little street that goes in there. So where are people going to park that have 2 or more vehicles?
So I think it's important to remember that a lot of our units are studio and 1 bedroom. And those people aren't going to have 2 cars. So, every studio and likely every 1 bedroom is going to have 1 car, which would offset, because you take 1.5 per unit, you don't differentiate the size of the units in your code. And so when you average it out, I think you're going to find that there's 2 and 3 spaces for the larger, like the 2 bedroom units.
The other question that I have is, or the other comment that I have about this is that the purpose of this grant is to encourage development. And so far, I haven't really seen Battleground having an issue with developers wanting to build apartments here. And so I would be against it just for that purpose, is that, as far as the revenue loss that we will ultimately have for those 8 years that we're not going to be collecting taxes, it is, somebody else could come in and buy that land and develop it without asking for that tax break. So
It's been on the market over 10 years.
that's my opinion. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Moving on, we're going to Mr.
Yeah, I just had a question about the affordable housing with the 10%. Is there a timeline of how long you would offer that, or would that be permanent? The length of the
It matches
complex?
up with the grant.
Huh?
It matches up with the grant period, the
So-
8 years.
So you would only have the 10% for the 8 years. Beyond that, you wouldn't have affordable housing?
Well, we wouldn't be required by the DA to have it because it matches up. When you go back to the 9th year, then you're paying the full tax. And the incentive in the state program, but we've added it to the 8th year, even though the state has 0 affordable, is to incentivize developers to have affordable housing in their projects. And I would say that that's the same thing for the whole grant. Is someone mentioned it as a loophole. Yeah, but it's also an incentive. And it's an incentive to build in your RC zone. Your RC zone costs more to build in than when you go outside of it. And so, yeah, you're going to see a lot of apartments out in the sort of the suburbs of Battleground. But the RC zone is aimed at trying to bring them to the inner core and to make them mixed use and to have a nice boulevard down the middle. And so this is a more expensive product than you would see in your the suburbs of Battleground. And the intent of the proposal is to help combine those two, build per RC, but be able to afford it.
So I like that you brought back the 10%, but then it concerns me after 8 years where people are going to go when they no longer have affordable housing. So, I mean, a lot of times people, when they get in somewhere, they want to stay there permanently, especially if they're like a senior or.
Sure.
So that's concerning to me, but thank you for at least considering that.
Well, let's do the 12-year program and then it's there for 12 years.
Is that it?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Cortez, please, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for coming today and presenting this project. So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. The commercial aspect of the project is going to be generating property tax revenue. It's not going to be part of this facility of tax exempt.
That's correct.
Okay, and that was the 36,000 square feet of commercial space that you were referring to, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I mean, that's not a small space. That's a lot of commercial that's going to be generating property tax revenue
And a lot of sales tax as well.
and sales tax, obviously, correct. I'm just curious, what is the cost, the expected cost to build of this entire project? Do you have a dollar figure right now?
85 million.
$85 million. So once it's done,
Hold on one second.
yeah. So arguably 85 million in today's dollars, but in roughly 10 years, that's going to be probably $100 million project.
Well,
Perhaps.
with
Obviously,
inflation-
nobody has a crystal ball, but
Yeah.
it's certainly going to be closer to 100 million than 50 million, right?
Oh, it won't be 50.
Yeah. So, I mean, a sizable investment in our community. And so I guess what I'm getting at is if it's roughly $85 million to construct this project, give or take a couple million, in the time that the tax exempt status is over, and that's just for the residential, correct?
Yeah, and it's not the land for the residential, it pays tax, but not, what doesn't pay tax is the improvements.
Just the improvements, okay.
Correct.
So again, I mean, this is not like the entire project is tax exempt. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that correct.
You're
This-
correct.
Yeah, okay. So by the time the 8 years is done, roughly $100 million project or an $85 million project in roughly 10 years, the amount of investment that that's going to be bringing into the city in terms of tax revenue, property tax revenue, sales tax revenue, so forth, is going to be pretty sizable. Would you not agree with that statement?
I would agree wholeheartedly with it.
Okay.
That's why we're, from a Seltzer standpoint, that's why we're excited about the project. I think your city is very dynamic. And we think there's a real need and use for a project like this. And it mixes, I'm not going to say it's totally unique, but it is a little bit unique. It mixes commercial with residential in an urban area. And which is just exactly what you did when you put the RC zone in place to encourage more people living downtown. And then, that's what it does.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I do share the concern of the parking. I mean, I think most, I'm going out on a limb here, I think most on council would share that same concern. That is something we do get complaints over as far as overflow parking of a lot of our apartment complexes. So can you do anything about that? I don't know the answer to that. I know we have another developer in town that he is going above and beyond and doing 1.9 per that project. And so I'm not sure how that would impact your project, but I do appreciate you coming before us. And I do look forward to seeing this significant investment in our community. Thank you.
I hope we can make it happen.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Before we go through the second round, I read the Johnson Economic Report. I did not see the breakdown in there of where it stated specifically the commercial end being taxed and the residential end being taxed and where the difference was in that. Do you know that it's in there? Because I saw a number roughly 500 grand somewhere, sticks in the back of my head. But again, as we see 8 or 10 pages of number upon another number, pretty soon they're just a jumble of numbers.
They're good at numbers. I can tell you the state program requires exactly what you described. Whether it's in that report, I don't know. You know, in the report, I can tell you that that is how the tax base works in the MFTE program, is that the commercial land and buildings get taxed, the residential land gets taxed, the residential construction of the vertical doesn't.
Which makes sense to me, which in the long run kind of scares me because I don't think Olympia thinks that way, but they very well may have ended up on that, some by a stroke of miracle. This is a tough one for me because again, I'm not real hip on giving away the people's money. I'm not real hip on opening up the people's checkbook. And I'm not real hip on letting folks pass by on their obligation. I will say that obviously in Olympia, that the builder crowd has better lobbyists than the mom and pop folks do. I'm a mom and popper. I have 3 rentals. If I don't pay my taxes, Ms. Topper, the county treasurer, will lay them online and sell them for me. So it kind of disturbs me in that fact that there will be roughly 180. Is that the number of apartments? 180?
220.
220, excuse me, 220. So 220, if each of them have a child, I doubt each of them will because of the studio apartment and a whatever, but let's say just half of them do, 110. That's 4 classrooms that aren't going to be paid by those people. Yet my renters will pay for those people in the school system.
Yeah, there's that balance of, I mean, we're offering up affordable and the other apartments aren't. We're
Well,
offering-
I mean, I think I'm probably, well, I'm way below affordable. I should probably go up to be affordable. But I do appreciate that. I'm really torn now that because until you stated the commercial, I had thought it was like Mr. Cortez, that it was across the board.
No, it's not.
And
That I can, you can read, I mean, I'm not challenging you at all, but I've read the program from the state and it's very specifically says exactly what we were saying here.
Yes, sir. And I believe you that that's your life. Our life is different, as you know, as elected officials. This ain't our business. Our business is trying to sort out if it's good for the community or not.
Sure.
And so, oh boy. Well, I'm gonna ponder this a little bit more. I am leaning towards the fact that, again, everybody pays their own freight. And we'll just have to see where we go from there. I do see Mr. Rogers, are you back on? No, Mr. Bowman, I see you're back online. What do you have a question for the gentleman?
Yeah, Miss Erdman, what is the total? I see in this Johnson Economic Report that the total tax direct impact to the city cumulative over 8 years would be 2.46 million. Is that correct?
I didn't compare or do our own calculations, but that's what it is in the.
And that's the cities, and then but that's not including fire district, that's not including school district, right?
I think this breaks it. Did it break it down?
I was trying to find it quickly. I was on page 2.
Ms. Lowry, while you're looking at that, if the total tax rate on us is 9.5%, which it is,
Very next page.
from on high, how much of it would be the city's portion of that? Do I understand?
Never mind, that's the right.
So if our property tax is at roughly 9.5%, just when you break open GIS at the top, it talks about 9.5 and then breaks it all the way down. What part of that 9.5 would be ours? The $1.22. So out of $9.50, $1.22 is ours. $7.30 is everyone else's, or $8.30. Excuse me. Okay.
Councilmember Bowman, if you look at the chart on page 8, I believe
Yes.
that breaks it down.
So on page 8, our total is 286,000. So the overall total then is the 2.4 million.
So that would be 286 times 9.5.
No,
I think Ian's got some information. He's on page 8 also.
that's just a tax.
That's what you guys were anticipating, that we need to base on. That's not the tax rate.
Yeah.
If you do 91,000.
Yes,
that's
so
actually
the-
4 times 8.
The second paragraph on page 8
Yes.
of the report estimates the total tax per year of 536,000.
That's what I saw that.
And so I don't know what rate he used here, but the rate he used assumes it's $67,000 annually to the city.
So, or 536,000 over 8 years.
That sounds right.
So what I'm looking, I get that to the city. What I'm looking for is the total amount, the decision that we make to forgive $536,000. What's the total amount that we're putting everybody on the line for? Fire district, library, C-Tran, schools.
Well, the total taxes for the county would be 536,000 a year, so it'd be that times 8.
So that's okay
And just the battleground portion is the 67,000 per year.
per year.
So,
Okay.
Okay,
So 536 a year over 8 years,
$4.5.
$4.5 million. Okay.
But that doesn't come out of the school district gets paid on a per student
Right.
basis. You don't get, doesn't get deducted from how much they
No.
collect from the state. And about 80% of the school district's budget comes from the state.
Correct. Their budget wouldn't change. However, the millage rate on everybody else would go up.
Well, you don't forget that, look at all the money that's getting pumped into the system. You have to take
It
that into
impact
account
fees,
too.
which don't go towards.
You're
operation.
collecting, just during the construction, you're collecting $8 or $9 million of sales tax. Or the state is. And
Yeah,
then it gets
which-
divided.
Which
So-
I get that 100%. I get that you're going to collect sales tax just like any other, just like Mr. Hewitt's doing on his 220 homes that he's doing.
Yeah.
I get that 100%. Going back to what Ms. Walters brought up and former Mayor Cortez brought up, it's interesting to me to hear in 2 meetings, one developer say use of cars is going down. We don't need 1.5 lots. One developer saying we need 1.9 lots because there's so many cars. I don't know that I get 1.5 and I get cars going down if you're down in Vancouver.
Do you know what size units they had on average?
Theirs were
Now that I think about it, it was 2 and 3
2 and,
bedrooms.
theirs
2
were
and 3
bedrooms.
See, that's the, you
That's
you
the-
can't
that's the
ignore
difference.
that part of it.
That's
because,
Apple.
Ours,
Apple's
How many
not-
studios are you putting? How many studios are out of the 220?
how many studios in one bedroom?
Roughly. 85 studios, 85 one bedrooms. I think the rest are 2 bedrooms.
So 170.
That's pretty
So
close.
2/3 of it is likely to have one car.
And only 50 would have.
Which
Well, the one bedrooms will have more than one.
which I get, and I go back and I know I'm not the norm, but I got 2 drivers in my house and 6 vehicles. The mayor has 2 drivers in his house and 5 vehicles. And battleground, and we don't have small vehicles. If you go through most of our subdivisions in battleground, you don't have small vehicles. You have big trucks, you have, it's battleground. It's completely different than a downtown Vancouver or
We're not
downtown
putting in
Portland.
compact spaces either, just so you know.
There's no compact spaces.
These will be full spaces.
Now, don't pin me down on.
We'll use
none,
the term
because I need to
roughly.
look at the drawing, but in general, we've told them we want 9-foot wide spaces.
Okay.
And you're probably gonna find some compact, so I'm not gonna say, but we, when we build our developments, we don't want people banging the doors when they open them up.
Because that was going back to what Mr. Rozier said, the deputy mayor, in asking about the affordable housing. This was the same tax loophole, I will say again, because that's what it is. And I don't blame you for taking advantage of it. I'm a business owner. I take advantage of every tax loophole I have. That's why I have 5 vehicles, right? So, but the Esther Short Park area was built with this. And I would be willing to bet I'll bet you my council paycheck for the month that there's no affordable housing left in Esther Shore Park area, that it's all high-end housing now. Now that that has ran out, that's all high-end housing. And when we were down there for the Association of Washington Cities here last month, and I'm driving my Chevy Duramax and I'm trying to park it in the parking garage that they built for their Priuses, that you can't, and you can't find a parking space for this truck, that's a concern of mine. And I get this 100% in those type of areas. In Battleground, I think it would be the first in Battleground. I guess, I think the Village could be considered close to this, live, work, with retail down below. It's not gonna be quite like this, but I just think that,
Most of these units are not live work. There's just some that are reserved as the possibility.
yeah,
Most
but
of
having
these are-
retail below, that type of thing.
Yeah,
Which there is some in the Village that are kind of that way.
and our parking for the affordable units is the same size as the parking for the non-affordable units.
Well, the one thing, just to clarify too, this project is parked for not only the residential, but the commercial aspect. So they have a parking requirement that they meet based on square footage per commercial plus the 1.5 for the units, just to clarify too.
So that comes into play as well. So there are commercial standards, there are residential standards. They meet both.
Yes.
I
But
might,
how do you,
I was gonna add, and we can get into these details as part of site plan review, but our code allows for shared parking agreements. So if there was an overflow issue with the residential, that could potentially go into the commercial areas when those areas aren't busy in the evenings. So that's an
that's
option.
what I was gonna ask is how do you, but what if it's, who monitors that when I have my business downstairs and the overflow came into my lot and they took off for the weekend or whatever, and I've got 5 cars, 3 of them broke down and 1 of them without a license plate sitting in my lot, like we do over at,
We would assume he would be in charge of that.
Yeah,
Not you
that's a good
personally,
point.
but
Yeah, well, may as well be. That's a good point. There would be a shared parking agreement. And we've done this before because if you think about it, the retail is typically busiest during the day, evenings for the restaurants, but day for and then in the evening, when the people are coming home from work, the residents of the apartments, they have the ability to overflow into the commercial, and then vice versa during the day. It flows the other direction. Now, does that mean you'll never have a problem? No, but it really works. It's a good counter use of shared parking because they're directly counter to one another. And so you do end up with some surplus, at least opportunities in the commercial space there.
and yes, ma'am.
I just want to clarify, I looked up Esther Short Commons and their households must earn either 50% or 60% of the median income. So they're currently restricted to lower income.
That's on one.
Oh,
That's what
man.
you're talking about.
No, that's
no,
not-
there's a
that's
whole
not-
bunch of them down
yeah,
there.
That's not the location. we was talking
Esther Short Commons?
That's a newer one.
No, that's the newer one. I'm talking about the one that was put in like 15 years
The
ago.
one with the gym and everything underneath?
No, I don't know. I don't go to
The
the
one with
gym.
Starbucks.
Do you look at me?
The
You
one
see
where
me
the
in a gym?
The one where the Starbucks is the older one.
Well, that one I
That's
think
not-
is condos. The other
You
one.
don't
that
get a body
has-
like that working out at the gym. That's
I know another one does have Section 8
So
vouchers.
initially, they wanted the Starbucks as apartments, and they converted it to condos once the taxes.
Well, I know
went
those
up.
are fancy.
Yes,
So-
that's the one.
And then finally for me, and then Aaron will see where we're heading. On these commercial spaces, if they all aim towards the center, I assume then that the will there be loading docks or there will just be doors?
Just doors.
Just doors.
Yeah, these aren't going to be,
And then, and the way that sits, there really won't be, I'm always concerned about looking at loading doors when they face the public. But the way this sits beside the hotel, there is no street side look at that. per se, because it'll all be blocked by that. And then whatever's coming on the other side of you there, Fred Meyer owns it currently, who knows what they'll do. That will be commercial as well. Is that the understanding? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions before we ask Aaron what the plan is? What's the plan? What's the hope?
So the whole purpose would be a kind of it is a state grant program. You can choose to adopt a program for specific areas. Your question. That's the case. To include this program. Or we can look at it.
But others could ask to have it included later on too, right? Other developers could come back and ask later on, and we could look at them just as we go.
Yeah, maybe technically do this as a trial project, and if things work out, we can look at maybe designated areas.
Mr. Cortez, sir.
Yes, I'm not so much in favor about looking at a broader, I like the case by case kind of deal. And I like how you presented that, try as a trial, right? See how it works. Yeah, like I said, it's a significant investment in our community. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to allow the city manager to work with the developer to amend the developer's agreement to add the multifamily tax exemption program for this specific project. That is my motion.
Thank you, sir. We need a second first.
Okay, second.
Okay, there's a second. Now, what's the ask?
Including what's all been presented. Or are we gonna work on that later? So like when you talked about grant funding toward and the 10%, is that all included in what we're talking about right now? Moving forward with?
We definitely work with the developers to kind of connect some of those.
That would be our understanding. Anything we presented to you is what we're offering.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one quick one.
Yes, sir,
Sorry. Mr. Mayor.
please. That's
Do
fine.
do you have any tenants already lined up, or is this build it and hope that they will come kind of thing?
We have some very interested parties, yes.
Okay. My concern would be to give it tax abatement for 8 years and have it sit empty.
Oh, let me tell you. My
I'm sorry, that
concern,
went by me. Would you state that again, the question?
My concern would be to give a tax abatement and have it sit empty.
yeah, my concern would trump yours.
Fair enough. Probably should.
We're not going to build this if we don't think there's good
Yeah,
interest.
just curious if you had what the
Touche.
demand was. Yeah.
And the guy back here, Pete, that's his job.
Any other questions before we move on, and we'll just turn the, Ms. Cody, we'll turn the voting pad on, please, ma'am.
Yesterday. Alan.
Everyone locked in.
Yeah, I know.
You're not locked.
You're not locked in. Mayor.
Yeah,
No,
he's thinking about it.
Oh,
I'm still pondering.
This is where Jeopardy music comes in.
I can see
Yeah.
the wheel turning.
I can hear him turn.
That used to be for,
Crazy.
that used to be for Lisa Walters. That was her fan.
Passes 4-3. Thank you, sir.
Thank
We
you.
look forward for big things. We got long memories. We'll talk bad about it. And you look like such a nice man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Moving on, Ms. Erdman.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Westby. I've met most of you. Welcome to the two new counselors that I've not met. I want to start just with an introduction of me, and then I'm going to introduce Eddie, and Eddie is going to take you through the update on this project and a request of the council. I'm going to start very personally to say that while our company is 24 years old, we've generated $350 million in projects from Montana to Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. This project's very personal to me because we live right on Parkway and Merritt Drive and have lived there for 23 years. So I'm a longstanding member of this community. This project's very personal because I know this community pretty well, and this community in some way, shape, or form has been talking about wanting a pool and wanting safe water for kids to be able to learn to swim so they don't drown at Louisville Park, so they don't drown at Battleground Lake. They wanted a pool for a long time. Your own visioning exercise turned up that result. And I'm here because this is an opportunity for this council to get not only a pool, but a value program, a value proposition like the YMCA. In many of these pools, the largest cost is not the installation, it's not the construction, it's the maintenance, it's the ongoing pro forma. And the YMCA takes care of that. Not only takes care of it, but takes care of it in an outstanding way where there's again, this value proposition in the community. There's service to underserved elements of our community. The YMCA has made the initial investment and bought the property at Rasmussen and 503. The way that YMCA projects are developed is they are public-private partnerships. So there is private philanthropy and there's public funding. The communities where the Y goes, it's being invited in. All the earmarks are here that the Y, it would be welcome here. We've heard some of the objections of helping to subsidize an operation like this. I just would remind you that it's a 501c3. It's not a for-profit organization. And with that, I'll turn this over to Eddie White, who is the Regional Vice President for the YMCA, the Columbia Willamette, manages the Orchards YMCA that I'm sure that you're all familiar with. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Thank you, council members, mayor, for letting us present today and give you an update of where we're at. I know there's some new council members here, so I'm going to give a little bit of a background. I won't take too long, but just give a bit of a background on the project. I can get this to move. What button did I hit? All right. Sorry about that. All right, so introductions. So Mike introduced me. I'm Eddie White. Tyler Wright is our CEO. With this, the Battleground Task Force, I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second, but Russell Brent, Jodine Dixon, who's with us here today as part of that. Carl Johansson, he's with Johansson Wing Architects and has been a big part of this project, both as a supporter and also with helping us with renderings and site preparation for the facility. And then obviously we just met Mike as well. So we can go ahead and look to the next one here. So the YMCA Columbia Willamette was what I'm part of. Our territory is we go south to about Wilsonville, out to Hillsborough, then out to Gresham, and then north to Ridgefield is our service area. And so as Mike said, I've been I just recently moved into a VP role, but been the executive director at the Clark County branch for the last 13 years. And that facility was built in 2000, and then we did an expansion in 2014. In 2000, we opened with a recreational pool, and then we found a need for a lap pool as well. So we built that in 2014 and seeing a lot of activity with that. I'll just give you that brief. So just give you kind of a history of this project. So in 2013, as I mentioned, conversations of a pool, I started here in 2007, and conversations of a pool in Battleground was one of the first topics I was part of. Mike Cirillo had me speak at the opening of the cinemas down the street about a potential pool here. So we've been talking about it for a long time, but we really got organized, I would say in 2013, which brought us to site exploration. And we covered a lot of different opportunities. We looked at partnering with the schools, different locations. I know we've presented a few different locations to council in the past as well. So that started in 2014. And in 2017, we did a market study, and we studied a couple different sites. Both of them had equal, success is what it amounted to. Is we build it, yes, there's going to have enough people come here and use the facility to make it a viable operation. So, and I'm happy to share that with any new council that would like to see that study. 2018, started working with Mike Westby and feasibility, how we're going to raise the money to build this facility. And then in 2019, Tyler Wright came on as our new CEO. The timing probably wasn't the greatest, walking right into a pandemic. But with him, he came from the California area, and we'd really been talking about a full facility prior to that. We heard the community really wanted a pool, and there were conversations about, okay, well, let's just do a fitness facility and then add the pool. Well, we reversed that conversation because he's had experience with just operating pools standalone. And so now the conversation switched to, well, let's do the pool. That's what the people want. And then if there's growth into a fitness facility later on, we can add that into it. So our plans and the property that we purchase allow for growth beyond just the aquatic center that we're talking about today. 2020, we signed a purchase sale agreement for the Rasmussen property. So it's right there off of 503 in Rasmussen is where the location is. We purchased 9 acres there. We only need about 5 acres. So we'll probably be looking to sell some of that acreage off. And we purchased the land, signed earlier this year to purchase that property. So we now own that property. So I'll talk a little bit about the project next. So we're talking about an aquatic center here to begin with. It's about 18,000 square feet. We'll provide swim lessons. And as Mike said, a big part of what we do is safety around water. So that's incorporated into our swim lessons, as well as bringing the community in to teach them how to be safe around water. Not everybody wants to be next to Michael Phelps, but we want to make sure kids are safe when they do get around water. I know myself as a young kid traveling, and I fell into a pool at one point in time, and I'm thankful that I did learn how to swim at the YMCA because I fell in. My parents weren't around. They were getting dressed as I was waiting, and they said, "Don't go near the pool, Eddie." Of course, what does a 5-year-old kid do? Yeah, he's standing around the pool. I fell in, and luckily knew enough to clamber over and get myself out. So that's a big part of what we do. But along with that is we also offer exercise classes, community events, swim team. Currently, the Battleground and Prairie swim teams are swimming at our pool in orchards. So this would allow them to swim at a little closer location than driving down 503, which we all know takes longer and longer every year to get down. As I mentioned before too, we have the potential for expansion in the future. So that really summarizes the project as we're looking at it. So then we get into the funding sources, and this is where Mike's been a great help. And we, as you can see on the slide here, public funding is a big chunk of that. That comes from city, the county, state, and federal requests. We did purchase the property for $2.6 million. And then looking to sell off the parcel that we don't need, which could be reinvested back into this project as well. And then we also have in-kind construction commitments from the local trades as well. So, and you can also see the Cowlitz Tribe has already invested some money into the project too. So those are some of the sources that we've identified to help us fund this project. And that really gets to our request to the city is looking at the possibility of waiving some of the development fees, such as planning review, building permitting, engineering review, just hoping to have some help in those areas, and then a commitment to support construction of funding when we get to that. I will say whatever the city does really helps leverage those other sources of funding. If the city has made a commitment into this project, it really shows well when we're asking the county and the state and the federal systems for funding to help support this project. And with that, I'm pretty short and sweet. I will open up to any questions that you guys might have.
Was short and sweet. Thank you. Mr. Bowman, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you go back to the last slide that you just had there before this one? Actually, two, sorry, keep going. So how much money does the YMCA have right now raised? Not in kind, not, how much money do you have cash in hand, ready to go, ready to start this project?
The purchase of the property is what we've invested in the project to this day.
So the 2.6,
2.6 million.
and you want to sell off the surplus property,
Correct. Yes.
and that will still stay commercial, is that correct?
Yeah.
What is the zone?
Okay. And what is allowed in regional and commercial apartments?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because I've heard rumors about apartments going in there, or someone wanting to develop that for apartments, being sold off and wanting to develop that for apartments. I would not myself, I mean, there's 600 council members here, but I'd never look at that myself. That's commercial property. On the private-public partnership, who was the public partnership in Orchards? Was that the city?
We partnered with actually the Vancouver Housing Authority was one of the partners in the Orchards project. State of Washington was part of our expansion when we built the pool.
So when you guys first built it, because when you first built it, you had just a small pool, right?
Yeah, we opened, we were about 40,000 square feet when we first opened. We had the recreational pool.
Yeah.
And then the gym, and then we did about a 15,000 square foot expansion, which included the lap pool, walking track, and we expanded some programs.
So the first portion of that was just Vancouver Housing Authority and State of Washington.
I wasn't there at the time, but yeah, those are the two that I know of, yes.
Okay. And you said that the Orchards location, you did a $15,000 square foot expansion on that.
Mhm.
And you're expecting this pool to be total overall
18,000 square feet, yeah.
Where have you guys been, like, looking at what, and I've been consistent with this since day one, since I've heard this. I have no problem whatsoever looking at deferred impact fees, those type of things that we've done with anyone else in the city to be able to develop, to allow you to get going, start making some money and defer it. We did that with Red Robin. It worked really well. I think we've done it with some others too that helped out to be able to get it going. My biggest thing is, do I believe the community needs a pool? Absolutely. I think that the community needs a pool. In looking at Sherwood, I think there's two ways you can do this. And I've said this from the start, but no one's ever wanted to do this. City of Sherwood, their agreement dates back to 1996 when the Sherwood residents passed a general obligation bond to construct a recreational and aquatic facility, and then passed and signed a 20-year operating agreement with the YMCA of Columbia, Willamette.
Mhm.
Everybody's afraid to go ask the people what they want. When you want the people's money, everyone's afraid to go ask the people what they want, because if you ask the people and they say no, then where do you go, right? What do you do next? So if we go ask the people, if we were to put this out to a vote, and that's what I would ask council, if we were to put this out to a vote today, would people pass this? You know, if we were going to say, hey, we're going to give you, what do you think the total is, Mr. Erdman, that we would have in plan review fees and all that?
We haven't taken a look at their new proposal. I haven't seen the building plans, but we did it back in 2020, and I believe the facility was a little bit bigger then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But total planning fees were about 5,000, engineering fees, 12,000. not including impact. With impact, total engineering fees about 402, building permit fees about 17. And then obviously the sewer SDC is close to 200,000, water about 80,000.
Yeah, so
$800,000.
$800,000 roughly. And
425.
in 2020, we ran a public safety annexation. It was the largest tax increase that I know of in the city. It pretty much doubled everyone's taxes in the city by breaking off and having the fire district be their own separate and us annexing into them. It passed by 80% roughly, right? I think it was 80, a little over 80 point something. Prior to that, the last time we went out and asked people for money was a parks bond, and it failed miserably. The problem with it is it was only Little League fields. And we're gonna listen here in a little bit about our parks plan and what the Parks and Community Engagement Board has come up with and using our parks and what the citizens want. And I look at other communities, and we seem to have a bunch of people that want their project, and every one of your projects are good. YMCA is good. Little League fields are good. Football fields are good. Disc golf fields are good. They're all good, but no one wants to get together and work together and make this, we're all competing against each other, trying to fight for space on a field, instead of bringing everything together and asking the community, what do you guys want? It came out in our visioning process. They want parks and open space. They want to be able to use this stuff. But if we were to give $800,000 to you guys and say, we're gonna give you $800,000, there's going to be a portion of our community that's very upset about that, because we gave $800,000 to a pool and their kids don't use a pool. Their kids use baseball fields. And so that's my issue with it is I have no problem deferring it, stretching it out over a period of time and, seeing how it goes. But we've tried this. I tried it when I was mayor. I know Mr. Johnson tried it when he was mayor before. Mr. Cortez has tried it. Mr. De Los Sandro's tried it. Ms. Walters tried it. That's every mayor that's been here since I've been here. And we've all tried sitting down with the organizations and saying, let's get together on this. Let's get together with the county. We had meetings with the county, Mr. Westby, you, myself, Ms. Walters, Mr. Medvigi, and I have no clue where the county is. Has the county ponied up anything?
Thanks for your questions, Mr. Bowman. First of all, I would push back gently just to say, in your own visioning exercise, which I thought was an incredibly well done and timely piece of due diligence, there was a very strong undercurrent in that and strong, concise statement that this community wanted a pool. My kids are all grown now. I would have loved to have a pool. It's going to take leadership to bring a pool. If not this, I don't know what your other opportunity is. Jeff Swanson had said once upon a time you could give him a pool and he wouldn't take it because he'd be scared to death of the overhead. But the idea of a YMCA coming into the community, there's more headwind here where I live than I've ever seen. And I respect it because there's a fiscally conservative backbone behind it. And as a resident, I respect that. Let me answer your most recent question, Shane, and that is the county. I just talked with Dick Rylander, and I know Dick's got to get through an election, as you all have had to do. But I've talked with Dick, I've talked with Gary Medvigi. He believes that the support is there. They're looking for the source of it. They're going to follow your lead. Now, once upon a time when we were before you virtually, you said, go out and see if the county's interested. And if the county's interested, we'll come in. I believe either Mr. Munson or Mr. Bowman said that. just going from memory, and we went to them, and there is encouraging support, and a majority of the members support it. We have not made the request yet because, and we're going to be making that request. But they want to see where the city is, and the state wants to see where the city is. We have a meeting with Rep. Hoff and Rep. Vic later this week, and we have a meeting with Dick Rylander early next week. And we were hoping to be able to share your leadership. So as Eddie White had just said, the opportunity to leverage, to extend those dollars out and leverage and lead and bring a pool to this community for $800,000 is of value. And I do this for a living, and I've been doing it for 40 years. And I wouldn't say this, I wouldn't have taken on this project as somebody who lives here and shops at Safeway and shops at Fred Meyer, and my kids played Little League ball here and football. I wouldn't say this if I didn't believe it. So this is the opportunity. You have an opportunity, and we have timed it this way so that you can lead, and I'm hoping that you will.
Well, can I just follow up with it? I have no problem with that. And I have no problem with Mr. Rylander looking at this. The problem I have is Mr. Rylander's been in there a total of 3 months, 4 months, and he's up for election. And we as politicians all know how politicians are, and you guys know how politicians are, and we will tell you anything to, yeah, we're going to look at this. We're going to get to the bottom of it. But when they're telling us that they can't fund public safety, and they didn't take our example there and fully fund public safety like we did, I'm not too excited to think that they would follow our lead by giving you guys money to build a pool. They would just say, okay, that's a great idea. We're looking for money. We're all looking for money. We can look all day long for money, but they've never, in those meetings that we had, they never once gave a commitment. They always said, Mr. Medvigi was the same way. Oh yeah, we could use conservation funds. We could do this. We could do that. We could put it out at the golf course, which went against everything that you guys, every meeting that I've sat in here with you guys went against everything that you guys said about where you wanted that YMCA. It needed to be visible. It needed to be,
right.
It's crazy to think.
We were looking, Mr. Bowman, we were looking at all options. And so that did take us out to, Eddie and I probably spent 2 hours tromping around Cedars once upon a time. So we were looking at all options, including the Louisville campus of the school. And so that should just be a credit to the amount of due diligence that we've done. And now they have seized on the right location, and they committed to it, and they've purchased that. So we're at the point now, the county hasn't made a decision because they're waiting on you. Respectfully, they're waiting on you. And so we timed this very well so that they'd have that opportunity. So for those of you who have this concern, which I do respect, and I believe that Mayor Johnson falls into this category as well in terms of having the fiscal concern, we would offer you the opportunity to do this as a commitment that requires performance. So you would come in, but you would need to see other public entities come in as well. And you would need to see that performance for you to honor it. Because quite honestly, if that performance doesn't come, there won't be any permitting fees. There won't be the revenue to do this. So you're protected. But if you wanted in the language of a MOU or some letter of commitment, aspirational commitment, you could put language in there, and we could offer it to you because we do this for a living, where you say this would need to be matched by, and quite honestly, that gives me something valuable to go back to Mr. Medvigi with, Mr. Rylander with, and with the other county councilors to know that you guys are in, but you want to see it matched. And I would also say that organically, it's in the spirit of the challenge that we got the first time we presented this concept to you guys, to wanting to see what the county was going to do, wanting to see what the state was going to do, and ultimately wanting to see what the feds were going to do. We were in DC this last year. We had really great meetings. They said there's too much blue sky in the model, and they want to see where the local support is. We do have, you asked about revenue in hand. We do have, when we talk about that in-kind commitment, that in-kind commitment is real. There's a segment of this community, they represent the trades and they're willing to do this at 80% of market value to do this project. But what they're requiring is they want to answer to the same question you asked, Mr. Bowman, and that is, show us the money, show us that we're ready to go, and then we'll honor that commitment. So we haven't revisited it with them yet because we're not at that point. Somebody's got to jump in the pool, and we're offering you the invitation to do that.
So are you looking for, is it fee waiver or nothing? You're not looking for deferment at all. You want the 800,000 waived.
That is the request.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify too, we can't technically waive all of that. We can't waive the SDCs. That would have to go through the deferment. So we can waive the building and the planning and the engineering review and permit fees, but not the SDCs.
I want to put a finer point on that, Mr. Bowman. We're asking you to be as wise and as generous as you can be, with wisdom being the prevailing emotion that you bring into this, or not emotion, but value that you bring into this, that you are able to be as generous to this project as you can, because you will be setting the bar for others, and you will be leading. So within that, our request is for whatever the allowance is for mitigation of those fees, waiving of those fees. And then we're not making a specific dollar amount request tonight. We're asking you to take that into consideration and to make a decision on that in the coming weeks or days.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, question and then a comment. My question's for you, Aaron. Have we ever had a nonprofit come to us and ask us to waive fees or anything? Is this unique?
Not since I've been here, not to say it hasn't happened previously, but
Okay.
not since I've been here.
And then my comment is thinking about the many benefits of the YMCA. One of the things that really gets my attention is how many people will be coming into the city to take their kids to lessons that are going to stop and have dinner or go shopping at Walmart, Fred Meyer's. So it kind of seems like a lot of money to, what are we calling it? Not defer.
To take a pass on.
Yes.
To waive, basically.
Okay. But the benefit to the citizens and the tax revenue that we're gonna get having people stop in our city instead of going to Orchards and eating at Applebee's, and they're gonna come here and spend their money here and save gas and be happy with us. So anyways, I am very supportive of the project and future growth of the project. I'd be interested in seeing what we can do to help the project along. It's been a long time coming, and I would just love to see it completed. I've got nieces and nephews now that, where are they gonna go to swim lessons? They're gonna have to all pack in their SUV and go to Orchards. No offense to Orchards, but I would just love to have that stuff local that, can be able to do stuff in our own community. So that ends my comment.
If they had smaller families, they could get into a car.
Well, they don't have smaller families. They got SUVs.
Mr. McCoy, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Broman's remarks tickled my brain a little bit. And so I don't want to jump ahead and steal the park presentation thunder. But if memory serves, I believe it was 65% of respondents said they would like a pool and they would be willing to pay for it. And if I'm remembering the numbers on the tax, I believe somewhere around 60% would pay $5 or more a month. And I don't know where that, so the bond thing, it seems like that support might be there. I don't know the best way to fund it, obviously. That's not my realm, but personally, I have the same reservations about just waiving fees. But on the other hand, when I see 65% of our residents, this is what they want, then maybe I need to, as leaders often do, vote for what the people want, not what I want. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Mr. Cortez, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I'd like to see is, as we move forward, what this would, what we're, discussing about, potential fee waivers and or fee surcharge deferrals, right? And by the way, Mr. Erdman, what is a normal deferral on an SDC? I mean, is there a time frame? Is it like 8 years, 10 years?
I
What?
believe, I have to double check the code, but I believe it can be continuous. It stays on that sewer bill until they come forward and pay that fee.
Okay, so it almost like turns into a lien if it doesn't
Yeah.
get paid. Got it. Okay. And that's something we can talk about later. But what I'd like to see is I'd like to see you guys working with our city manager so we could figure out what the sales tax revenue that we would get from the construction of this project. Because I'm assuming a 18,000 square foot project, sales tax is going to be considerable, in my opinion, right? And so what would that be? And then, yeah, I do agree with Deputy Mayor DeRochers in that, something you can't quantify, even though it's going to be there, is the amount of economic activity that will be spurred by having this, right? In terms of people coming into the city, having their kids or themselves going to this facility, going to our restaurants, filling up with their gas, stores, et cetera, et cetera. So I do feel that, I'm wholeheartedly appreciative of my colleagues being fiscally conservative with the public's money. It was just a handful of years ago. I was there too. I was like, I don't know if this is the time. I don't know if this is what we should be doing. However, I will say that our community has been, from an economic standpoint, doing extraordinarily well. All of our funds that these impact fees or deferrals, and Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're very healthy, right? Okay. We have a lot of economic activity going on. You guys aren't asking for a tax abatement like the previous presenter, so we don't have to worry about that. And quite frankly, we're committing to, council has voted in just our last meeting to put our leadership on the line and commit to fixing our roads. And so the citizens know that we're serious about significant issues that are before the city. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to direct the city manager to work with the Y on what it would look like for impact fee waivers and deferrals, and also get to us the sales tax impact that the city will generate from the construction of the Y. So we can have the ultimate say so on putting our stamp on it and approving it. So that is my motion on the floor.
Kind of wordy.
It is.
I'll second.
There's a second on the floor. We'll continue with the questions. We'll move on to Ms. Walters.
Hi. I appreciate you guys coming in tonight. And I also appreciate all of the front end work that you guys have done to put this all together. I know you've come in front of us several times with different ideas of how to make this happen over the years, and I appreciate the tenacity. I guess one of my questions is, and I feel like maybe it's been answered, but I want to make sure that I'm 100% clear on this. Are you looking for any monies in addition to the impact fees at the moment?
We would look to you to consider that as part of the response to today, but we would respectfully leave that decision on that side of the dais. But we would like to offer that to you for consideration. Let me just say that it has been part of other YMCA models that cities have supported with outright funds in addition to mitigation of fees.
And then one of the concerns that I brought up the last time you guys were here was the membership fees. And I know that the Y has a program for low-income individuals and families. Is there any kind of a price break that we can possibly get because we're only getting the pool? Instead, and because the way I understand it is that the fee schedule is set up for both. It's set up for the workout gym facility and the pool facility kind of as a combined entity, but you can go to any facility and work out or whatever. Is there any way, at least in the first few years when we're first getting everything paid off, that we could do a special fee schedule for just the pool?
Well, I'll say just operationally that it makes it difficult if you open up and you're discounting right off the bat. You know, it's building a membership base, and I think I shared our membership philosophy with you, which I'm happy to share again. You know, I think our YMCA's model looks a little bit different than what municipalities typically use, and we're based on membership. And there's a lot of benefits to that as well, which would be translate not just to the operations in Battleground, but operations of the YMCA throughout Clark County. So I'm not saying no, but it would be something that we would really have to take a look at. And I've found since and that new philosophy came out, well, this has ended the first full year of it. And we're finding that at least at Orchards, you know, and in there it states that, you know, for the membership, we can discount up to 60%, and programs we discount up to 40%, depending on income. So where folks are at, and also the household size. We know that Battleground has larger households than some other communities. So there's definite benefit there as well, because we're not going into this thinking that, okay, a household unit's going to be 2.5. It's going to probably be 3.5 or, you know, more. So there's definitely that benefit. But we're finding at Orchards with our access program that we have, many of them are qualifying for that upper end, that 60%. So I don't, you know, I'd probably start off saying, let's start here, and is it working? And then back down if we need to, rather than start low and then go, okay, we're not able to make it work.
That's reasonable. And so just lastly, I just have a comment. I know that whatever we decide as a council, we're going to face criticism from the community. I mean, we just saw that with the bird scooters. And so the fact that we do have this study on hand, I think it helps our case to be able to push this forward. And so I would be in support of doing something like what you were saying about working with the county and the state, and just saying, okay, we're in if these guys are in. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Your usage projection first year, how many people are coming swimming?
How many people are swimming? It's tough to project, you know, you coming out of COVID. So I don't know. I will say that 11% of our usage was coming from Battleground pre-COVID. And you're talking about 30,000 visits a month. And that's not, you know, obviously it's not just swimming, but swimming is one of our heaviest users of the facility. So a facility like this, you know, you're probably looking at about 1,500 units. And that's just the membership swipes. That doesn't include the swim lessons and all those types of activities.
Well, as I stated years ago, I learned to swim at a YWCA. The YMCA was too expensive for my parents, but the YWCA worked out for us. So I get it. My problem here is, as we've always said, is that 65% of the people want a pool. We never ask that follow-on question. How many of you want to pay for it? And it always comes down to 4 people, doesn't it? It always comes down to 4 people making that decision on how many people want to pay for it. And in my case, I can't do it. I just can't do it, because if the people wanted to pay for it, then we'd hear more about it. I always hear about the pool when you guys are coming and that kind of thing. But is there a clamor in the little cul-de-sac I live in for a pool? There's not. Is there a clamor for the people I talk to in the neighborhoods that I walk? No, I don't think so. You're more than welcome to come, as we've always said, and that you pay your way. And so it sounds like maybe things are changing up here. I would ask my compatriots, since we asked in the last meeting, in the last 6 to 8 months, who has spoken to Mr. White or Mr. Westby outside of a council meeting? Who has spoken?
I have.
You have. Anyone else? Just you. Good.
Other people on the task force.
You have talked like Mr. Johansson, someone like that.
Well, yeah, somebody on the task force.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, cool. So, gentlemen, I do appreciate you coming. We've always opened up the floor to you guys. And so we will go for one more question from here. Well, we'll go till it finishes, and then we'll finish out what Mr. Cortez set forth. So we'll go back to you, Mr. Bowman, on the second go around.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's amazing to me that we have been at this for, we're in our 11th year.
We've been at it 11 years.
11 years. And this could have simply been done in 1 year. All you had to do was ask the people. The easy thing, like Mr. Mayor said, is to come in here and get 4 people to say yes. The hard thing is to sell it. Because when we did the visioning and we did all that stuff, I remember Mr. Tappaney standing right where you guys are. And this is what everybody wants. This is what everybody wants. And I asked them, did you ask them if they're willing to pay for it? And they said, no, we didn't. And all we had to do, we could have cured this problem a long time ago by putting a parks bond together, including a whole bunch of stuff in it, and going out and asking the people. And this would have been done. You guys would have had funding. You would have either had it or you would have saved yourself 9 years of headache. Because you would have had the people say, yeah, this is what we want. Because I hear that all the time. We hear people complain about our roads. And that was a 6-2 or a 5-2 vote at the last meeting to even raise money for our roads. That's how people get to work. That's how a community stays alive. And we hear those complaints all the time. But it baffles me that we will not get together. We're afraid, and I've said it so many times, we're afraid to ask the people. We're afraid to ask them. We'll take a vote. Mr. McCoy just showed me, the parks plan. They asked 39 people. 39 people. Actually, they asked more than that. 39 said yes, they would support paying for it. 16.
No, I think you're reading the wrong. It was 50. There you go. You're reading the wrong spot.
We asked 53 participants responded to this question, 2 skipped it. 38% said they'd be willing to pay $10 or more a month. 30% said they would pay $4 to $5 a month. Supermajority said they would be willing to pay more than $4 a month. 53 people representing 21,000. Now, I would love to see that. Put it on. If we follow that, put it out to the people. Let them vote. This will pass. You'll have everything you want, and then some.
Yeah, I guess that's where this model is a little different. We're not asking to burden just the city for this. Like you made the example of Sherwood, where we had an operating agreement with them. The city went to bond, and we operated that facility. So the city took on the whole burden of that project, and we just came in and operated and continue to operate and have a great relationship with the city of Sherwood. Here, we're not asking you to take the full bite of the apple. It's a part.
How's Ridgefield doing it? What's Ridgefield's model?
It's doing well. They've got the land.
No, what are they going to do though? What's their model? Is the city, what's the city bringing to it?
The land
The land.
and potential for mitigation of fees as well.
Okay, so if we would have gave you land,
Yeah, that's,
We tried that. We brought that up as a possibility. If you guys want to buy Rasmus,
Mr. Westby, I sat in Washington DC about 6 years ago lobbying for this project. And they said, here's where we can give you the money for it. If it's in this section of town, which happened to be south of Main Street, over by the community center. And we were told, no, that won't work. That won't work. That's not the right area. So it's real frustrating to me 6 years later to sit in a meeting with Mr. Medvigi and we're talking about Cedars Golf Course.
we were looking, once again, I do want to defend our efforts. We were looking at every possibility. And that was a possibility that was out there, so we chased it down, just like Louisville campus was a possibility that we chased it down, but that's water under the bridge, because the commitment is there now on this purchase of the property at Rasmussen. So respectfully, when you go out to Bowling, and we've done plenty of projects like that, we did the Boardman pool, that we did a pool in Spokane, we're doing the pool in Cheyenne. We know the model really well. City ends up with the burden. City ends up operating and owning the performance. That's what Eddie's saying, is that we don't want to go into the model where the Y just comes in and is the manager. We want to go in where there's a YMCA, a legitimate YMCA involved. And I'm going to take off my consulting hat right now, put on my battleground Tiger Center, and say, we need a pool in this community. There's too many kids. We have too much dangerous water. Too many kids, there was a kid this year, I'm sure you saw it. Dad looked away for 2 minutes and the kid drowns at Louisville Park. You heard Eddie's story, that could have been a 5-year-old that was at the bottom of the pool, it wasn't. And I'm glad, Mayor, that you got a chance to learn to swim at a young age. I did too. We have a pool, live a mile from it. My kids came to YMCA and they learned to swim so that they weren't going to be a casualty. So we need a pool if nothing, for no other reason than that safety issue. And in 10 years, you guys will be a legacy council for making this investment. And I've been doing this for 40 years, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe this. This is my community. I didn't need to take this project. I took this project because I care and because I believe in it, and I believe it's the best value and the best offer, and the only chance you're going to get to bring a pool to this community. I'm hoping that you guys see that. And I want you to be as wise and as generous as you can be with that information. And I appreciate all of you guys, all of the work that you do as a battleground resident, all the work that you do in service to this community. I sincerely appreciate it.
Last call. Questions? Seeing none. Ms. Cody, let's turn the pad on, if you will, please, ma'am.
Yeah, can you restate the motion?
Don't ask me.
Again, my motion was to direct the city manager to work with the Y and establish the exact amount of impact fee waiver and or deferrals, and to come up with what the estimated sales tax, the construction sales tax revenue will be generated from this project, and then bring that back to council.
Well, it's not committing us to anything except for that.
Correct.
No, it's just for them to do some research.
This is a step forward.
Yes.
And it will signal to the rest of the agencies that were spoken about today that we are moving forward. Okay. But again, we will have to ultimately approve this one more time.
Passes. Moving on. We're going to citizens communication. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the council this evening? Yes, sir. Come forward. Name, please. We're skipping the address. Let's go around.
You want the address too?
Well,
John
no.
Edzinga, 12 Northwest 19th Street. So to the mayor and Troy, I want to just say, thank you guys for the help that you gave our group. We really appreciate it. Mark, to Todd and his crew, would you just please say, Todd is awesome and the crew was awesome. Pickup, cleanup, chief, you and your crew were just a delight to work with, and we were glad that you were around as much as you were, because it just, reiterates that we have to be a safe and sane and a good community, right? To Miss Erdman, to everybody else, if you would say thank you, we really, really, really appreciate it, okay? The last meeting was great. And to Shane, my partner in crime, and Kendra's partner, thank you for everything you do, okay? That's all I got.
Thank
And
you,
I'm gonna
sir.
go home.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we'll close citizens' communications. We'll move to the consent agenda, and I would ask before we start that we remove letter E, so that it can be discussed. It will be after the consent agenda. We'll place it right after.
The consent agenda without item E.
I'd like to could I ask a question about the consent agenda?
Yes, please.
I just had a question about Waste Connections made a presentation to us that they would start waiving waste collection fees. However, I see them in the vouchers. When does that waiver take place? Do we know? They said Waste Connections said in their presentation that they would no longer be charging the city for service. Or did I make that up?
That might have been that was if we were having a direct contract or if we had negotiated as part of the agreement. I think that was part of the discussion.
Are you talking about the service at the city facilities and?
The city's trash.
Yes.
I think that starts with the new contract, which is August or September, but I can check in with them to confirm.
Okay, so
That's it. And I second the motion for it.
okay, cool. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Are there, does any council member believe that any other item needs to be withdrawn? If not, may I get a motion to approve? Did you?
Yeah, we just voted on that.
No, we voted to move mine back to the.
Move to
Okay,
approve the consent agenda minus item. E.
I moved to approve the consent
I didn't
agenda
hear it.
minus items E.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No,
hear
you're
it.
fine.
Okay, fine. And there was a second by Mr. McCoy, all when we've already in favored it, so we're moving on.
Yeah, you got it.
Now we're going to E. How can we let a bid out on this size of project and hope to complete by the 1st of October when paving season's done? As far as the completion of 502, 503.
It's not anticipated to be completed by October.
What is your hopes then? What are
It
we
will be
paying?
into-
What
it
are
will
we
be in-
paying this incredible amount of money for? What is our hope?
For when it's completed.
Well, what is our hope for this year?
I don't think you'll see any paving this year, so they'll start working on the utilities, those sorts of things, and then I would say early next year before you'll see paving. We haven't done schedules yet, so that's just a guess on my part, but
So it
no.
drags on.
It will be normal schedule. I mean, that it takes 6 to 8 months to build a project like this, so that's how long it will take.
Then why didn't we start 6 to 8 months ago?
Because we were still
We're-
working on right-of-way
We're-
acquisition. That's what held us up for the longest time, was trying to get all the right-of-way.
The original money came when?
Connect Washington. was what,
2012?
12?
No, 20.
I think it was
Between-
2015.
2015.
Yeah.
No, 2016.
20
John was here and it came when Jeff was here, right? I think.
We'll call it 2016 just for giggles.
Yeah, in that time.
In 6 years, our portion of this has just been incredibly tortoise-like. And I know it's because some of it, they can't make up their minds on whether it's indexed or whatever it is. But this money, once it's approved, so it will go into 2023. Will it finish out next year? Will we sometime, in September of next year have something going?
For sure.
finished?
So the working days on the contract's 150. So there's about 20 to 25, working days. So it's Monday through Friday.
Sure.
So we've got 20 to 25 a month. So doing that math, it's about 6 months. There's some time in there for procurement of hard to get materials. So yeah, I'm thinking like 6 to 8 months. So, you start now, you're March, April of next year.
And what disruption will there be this year of traffic flow and that kind of thing?
You'll have some periods of time when you're down to one lane, depending on what they're working on, and
Both
those will be-
directions?
Yeah,
And will they be removing any of the Jersey barriers?
they'll be pushing it back to add the turn lanes in. So that,
Pushing back to the
for
south?
example, northbound left turn lane, it will get longer, as well as adding one. So that will push back farther south. So you'll still have Jersey barrier, but it will move to accommodate those turn lanes.
And Mr. McCoy
No, I'm sorry.
and Ms. Davis.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was going to ask to pull this out to let you know that I have a 17-year-old son who's currently employed by Rachi.
Good for him.
And I just want to make sure this came up. If I need to step aside, then I will step aside. I want to let you know. And I talked to the city manager and the attorney, and they both suggested that I go ahead and bring this up to you guys.
And what do you wish to do?
The recommendation is to have Ms. Davis abstain from voting on this.
Okay, cool.
So I wish that they.
That will be fine. And then.
Recuse.
Pardon?
Recuse.
Yeah, recuse. yeah.
Abstain would be a no vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's- thank you. I recuse myself.
Okay, yes, sir.
Mark, when we started these projects, these were supposed to be 3 bienniums. We were supposed to have 6 years. We're 6 years in, we haven't finished the second biennium. How much of this is our fault? How much of it is the state's fault? Because when you've got 3 people that sit on the legislative committee that have been harping for the last few years that we need more money, we need more money. But, when we're looking at this project here and Safeway held us up, or whoever we want to say held us up, and now we got higher costs and we went out further and our costs are going through the roof because someone held us up. Would we have been better to eminent domain to move through it and say, look, we're going to eminent domain this, or we're going to buy it from you, but we can't wait around for you guys to figure out who Safeway Inc. is to buy this piece of property?
Specifically for that part of it, I would say no, because eminent domain just takes a long time.
Okay.
Had they ultimately said no or continued, then I think that would have tipped the scale the other direction. But, as long as it took for that, I think it just would have taken longer for the eminent domain piece. It's just a long process with the courts and all of that. It wouldn't have benefited us. To answer the first question, I think there's a little bit of blame on everyone. The state, as we talked about before, continues to change the rules, continues to do X, Y, and Z. When we knew we were short of money, we applied for a federal grant. That changed the process. So instead of doing, your typical SEPA, that sort of thing, you had to switch to a NEPA, added all of, the timing, the cost and sort of things with that. Staff's been busy working on projects, so trying to prioritize what's the more important. So like I said, I think everyone has a hand in how long it took.
It's, as somebody that lobbied for this for a long time, it's frustrating to me because the only thing, in my view, when I look at this project, the only thing that we have done is put a half road in that should have had a merge lane all the way to 503 or 502 behind Fred Meyer's and take out a signal. The only thing the state wanted got done really quick. Everything else has come to a screeching halt. And, you know, it's, I mean, I don't get it. I don't get how we're not, and maybe we are, maybe because I'm not in your world. So, but I look at what happened with 15th and Landmark Church, how many years that took us. I look at what happened with this project here. We haven't even talked to the school district yet, I'm sure, on the road going through there, except for the fact that we've said, hey, this is where road's going to go, right? So when that comes about, I mean, we're 6 years in, we've done one portion of 4 or 5 different projects in this. Like we're going to be on the end of the 20 years of this by the time this gets done. It's, I mean, I just don't, if we need to put pressure on the state, we need to put pressure on our counterparts at the state. We need to know that. And I'm tired of playing nice with the state. The state doesn't give a crap about us, just like the county doesn't, right? So we've got to put that pressure where, you know, with our electeds and say, look, you guys are holding us up on this stuff and it's costing us money, you know, and it's just, it's driving me nuts. And this is what the public said was going to happen, right? That we needed to get this fixed. Do you think this is going to fix our transportation problems that we had 8 years ago when we get it finished next year and, you know, year number 9 from when we started this?
Well, thankfully for this one, this will take us out 20 years at this intersection. We obviously have other issues to deal with, but at this intersection, it will cover us for 20 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And one thing I'll add is it's kind of late breaking news, but we were able to get more federal funds for this project. So we're at 4.1 million total for federal funds.
Good. That's the good news. Thank you.
Yes, that is the good
You
news.
might have brought that up first. We wouldn't have ripped you for 10 minutes.
I'm good.
By the way, we got $4.1 million. Anyone got something to say?
Well, may I get a motion to
Move to
approve?
approve item
this bid?
E.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Let's move. I see the ladies from the Parks Board here. Let's not keep them too long. I'm going to move number that up ahead and start with them. How long do you anticipate this taking, Sam?
There's the button for my microphone. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Well, we have Steve Dew, our parks consultant. He's going to give a presentation that I'm estimating might be around 10 minutes long. And then if Jennifer and Michelle want to say anything, they're welcome to chime in as well.
Well, we've been working on this for how long, Ms. Urban? How long has this been in the oven?
Well, this has been a year and a half. Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you. And so we'll get rolling.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. For the record, my name is Steve Dew with Conservation Techniques. And we've got a presentation to walk you through just to hit the highlights of the process and the product of the Parks Recreation Open Space Plan. And as I get into this, if I can go to presentation mode.
Yeah, I'm trying real hard. Okay, there we go.
All right. And I will try to meet Sam's 10-minute timeline. But
Take what you need.
it might be a bit of a rush. It's not advanced. Is it me?
Well, here, I can advance it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe the whole thing froze.
It's a good picture, though.
It's a good picture.
So it's not?
Okay.
All right, there you go. Okay, super. So just as a reminder, the Parks Recreation Open Space Plan, or PROS plan for short, is the city's strategic guide and management plan effectively for the next 6 to 20 years to plan for the enhancement, improvement, and care for your parks, your trails, your open spaces, and programs. It did jump forward, so I will try to go back a slide. It worked for me. Great. The Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan was previously adopted in 2015, so it is a little bit out of date, the prior plan. And having a new plan is also a component to be eligible for the Recreation and Conservation Offices, RCOs, state-based grants. So having an updated plan adopted by council is a requirement for pursuing state grants, and this will meet that end. And in terms of putting the plan together, a lot went into the document and the process. I'll touch on community engagement here in a moment, but the community engagement process was robust. We did hear from a significant selection of the battleground community, and this is jumping on its own. Part of the process included having our landscape architect visit and assess all of the city's parks, trails, open spaces, get a on the ground perspective of what's there, count quantities of benches, tables, look at ADA access, look at the condition of the amenities, the playgrounds, but also look at the capacity of the existing facilities in terms of sites that might have room for additional amenities, underdeveloped sites that might have opportunity for additional recreation components going forward. So that was part of our baseline understanding of what's here and what's on the ground. Beyond looking at the on-site information and marrying that up with what we heard from the community, the plan includes a needs assessment that is specific to the major areas of the system. So parks and open space, recreation programs and events, trails, and all of that is built around recreation trends that are both regional, statewide, and national, as well as what we heard from the community and what we saw on the ground. So we tried to really marry what we heard from residents and what we see from our professional perspective as what might work or what enhancements might make sense going forward. We also looked at the comprehensive plan goals and policies, amended and updated policies and goals in this plan draft to bring them more in line with what we heard from the community. And toward the end of the plan process and plan document, also put together a master list of projects that is the capital improvement plan. It is not a budget per se, but it is a guide for staff to work with council in future budgeting to get projects on the budget to fund and fully implement the plan over time. As a standalone city plan, it is going through a plan review and approval process. So this presentation actually is very similar to what was presented to a joint session of Planning Commission and PACE Board a couple of weeks ago. And as we move through the process, ultimately it'll come back to City Council for final review and approval within a month or two. Regarding community engagement, I mentioned earlier, we aimed for a robust process. Our goal really was to have an informed, inclusive, and engaged community process and make sure people were aware of the project and have ample opportunity to give feedback to the project. That included a community survey, online open house to be COVID sensitive, additional online outreach such as material on the city's website, social media pushes, discussions with stakeholders through group sessions, coordinating and working with the PACE board as a stakeholder and having them give guidance to the process, and ultimately with City Council in tonight's presentation and going forward. In all, we have heard from about 650 participants throughout the process, and I'll touch on some of the numbers here. So the bulk of that 650 respondents came through the community survey process. And just for clarification, the community survey was a two-pronged survey in that it was a random sample mail out survey to 2,500 households. So we had a 13% response rate on that, so about 250 responses. The balance of the survey responses came from the online survey, which was the same identical survey at the same time. Data sets were kept separate so we can compare and contrast the difference between the mail print survey and the general community-wide online survey. So in all, we had about 550, 560 responses through the survey. So a pretty substantial amount of feedback that gave us good baseline data from the community about their interests, preferences, and priorities for all things park, recreation, and trail. One thing to note is nearly everyone, 96% from the survey, feel that parks and recreation are either essential or important to the quality of life of Battleground. Visitation and usage is also high, and 65% of survey respondents say they visit parks and open spaces at least a couple of times a month. So people are out in the community, in the parks, in the open spaces, using what you've got, and that's great to see. Regarding some of the other statistics, trails came out at the top of most of the questions that trails were noted. So 90% of the survey respondents feel that trails is a top priority. And I know from the earlier conversation with the YMCA about pools, 80% of survey respondents feel that there's some support or moderate support for a pool in the community. We did not ask the follow-up question about whether you'd fund in the survey, but we did, as you noted earlier, note that in the online open house, which had a much smaller sample size. So going forward, I think it's prudent to ask the community again about willingness to pay. But for this process, the notion of willingness to pay wasn't a core focus of the community survey that we had put together. We were mostly looking at long-range interests, priorities, and things that people would like to do. So just to summarize some of what we heard in terms of priority improvements for the park system, connecting the gaps in the trails system and expanding trail connections is a high priority, as is improving and upgrading park amenities for existing parks. The city has several parks that are developed, but may also be underdeveloped. So enhancing and maintaining those going forward, doing things like playground upgrades and improvements over time, and adding amenities. Looking to expand recreation offerings for youth in particular. That could be in the form of after school or summertime programs, or additional coordination with sport leagues to provide those amenities. And community events was also a strong priority from respondents to the survey. In terms of some of the takeaways from what we heard through the survey, through stakeholder discussions, through the online open house, really tried to break it down into some core themes. One is about just taking care of what you have. And anytime we've done community surveys through our work, and we ask the question about whether maintaining what you have is a priority, and if we ask it in that way, it always comes out at the top. People are most interested in making sure that the facilities that the city's previously invested in stay in good shape and are well cared for. So that came true in this project as well. There's also strong interest in ADA compliance, ADA barrier removal, and also some interest in all-inclusive play area provision, making sure that the community has access for people of all abilities and capacity to get out and utilize play equipment. Beyond that is in kind of a system-wide look, is also making sure that the city's signage, wayfinding is enhanced to make sure that folks know where the parks are, what is available once they get there, how trails connect point to point, things like that. In addition to making sure the city's website is up to date and doing promotions periodically just to let people know what's available. For recreation opportunities, I already noted community events as a priority. Youth activities, after school summer programs were strong interests, and there is capacity for the city to expand into those areas a little more aggressively in the near term. For parks, trails, and open space, really is a focus on connectivity for trails. The city does have a number of trail segments throughout different areas of the city, predominantly in kind of the newer subdivision areas. But there's also the Chalachi Prairie line that needs to be expanded southward to connect into downtown and points south, which would require coordination with the county and other parties. But there's strong interest in having that spine continue south through Battleground. I've previously mentioned the need to improve existing parks, but the city also has undeveloped park property, such as the Remy site and a few others that should go through a master plan process to be more site specific, to build on what's in the pros plan in terms of general interests and really dive into that finer level detail of each of those sites in terms of their capacity for improvements and what should be cited there. So I think the rest is self-evident. I'll just keep moving forward in the sense of time. The overall pros plan, park recreation open space plan, is structured in a fairly logical order: introduction, community profile, talks to inventory and classifications, and then several thematic needs assessment chapters. So parks, trails, open space, programs. Operations and maintenance is also included, where we looked at current staff loads and funding for the city's system and compared that to some other jurisdictions and some national data. And the plan also includes goals and the project list and a whole host of appendix information as well for background. Our goal really in the project was to keep it a readable, kind of clean and digestible plan to at least read on the front end without the appendices, and just kind of highlight with a lot of imagery and call outs what we heard and what we see in the community, in your park system. So through a series of different chapters, you can kind of get a feel for what you've got and what the community is interested in. One section of the plan dealt with a system analysis that looked at system gaps, and those gaps were in a number of different ways. Whether there is gap in the condition of existing facilities, such as playground equipment that is getting on in years and may need to be replaced in the near term. But that accessibility is also one about physical accessibility. So the ADA piece: can people enter the playground? Is there a ramp? Is the surfacing adequate to let wheelchairs and other mobility devices move through a park space? We looked at that through our site assessment. So that's part of the gap analysis. The other component to it is the distribution of parks and trails across the city. So again, taking that system-wide look: who lives within a 10-minute walk or a half-mile distance from an entry point to a park or trail? And all of this under the notion of today's population, and as the city grows to a population of 30,000+ by 2035. So I'll walk through a series of maps here in a moment, but part of that site assessment that I mentioned earlier, where we had our landscape architect look at all of the different components of the existing facilities, translated into a color-coded matrix that we use to really highlight in kind of clean ways where the city is doing a really strong job and where some attention might be needed in the system. 11:17 versions of this will be in the plan, so it'll be more legible and readable than what you saw in your packets. But basically, the way to read the chart is: green is good, red needs attention, yellow is okay for now. And what stands out from a chart like this for us as plan professionals is there are a couple areas where the city needs to put some more effort. One is in the realm of ADA accessibility and just enhancements for making sure that people can move through and connect to the different amenities that the city provides, like having accessible picnic benches or tables, or again, the ramps into playgrounds, things like that. But another way to look at this chart is noticing the empty boxes. So that, in a sense, represents those amenities that aren't provided across the system that could feed into future discussions about site-based enhancements. Regarding the distribution aspect of the park system, we went through a series of mapping exercises where we used the GIS mapping to create walk sheds or travel sheds around different classifications of parks. This map is strictly for neighborhood parks. So those are your smaller kind of neighborhood oriented sites. And the model basically builds off of access points. So we drop pins on the map, much like you do when you are telling Google, hey, take me to this place and give me directions how to get there. You know, each pin represents a legitimate access point, not a property boundary. So any pin we drop then is using the road system to calculate distances. So we calculate out quarter mile, half mile, mile, depending on the park type. And then we connect all the dots. So the darker hues in this map represent a quarter mile walk shed. The more pale hues represent a half mile walk shed, just for reference. So you can see just from looking at neighborhood park classifications, you've got a couple areas that have some good density of parks where people live within a half mile, and the areas in white represent those areas where people live outside of that half mile area for neighborhood parks. We did the same for community and signature parks like Fairground Park. And in this case, because those are parks that have more amenities and provide parking and restrooms, it's a wider catchment area. So we went out to 1 mile and 2 mile as well. The modeling otherwise is the same. And then to take a system look of all the different park types together, we truncated all of those travel sheds to a half mile. So that half mile really does represent about a 10-minute walk, give or take. And you know, the comprehensive plan and land use management plan suggest implementing that 10-minute walk. So this is what it would look like effectively. So we peel off the non-residential areas in the dark kind of gray. We put on the walk sheds, and the areas left in white do represent those areas where people are outside of that half mile or 10-minute walk. This is a useful tool in that it helps us think through areas of gaps for potential future parkland acquisitions. So the maps and the plan document does talk to areas where the city is a little deficient and could focus going forward on securing additional park lands. And they're noted here on the map as well, and also included in the capital improvement program piece. Another aspect of the gap analysis or the system analysis is a review of the level of service that the city offers. So in the prior plan, the 2015 plan, there was a standard set for parks and open spaces at 5 acres per 1,000 capita. And that was reassessed through this process, looking at the inventory, looking at what's available. And the current plan draft that you have in front of you tonight proposes a refinement to that standard. And it segments between parks and open space. So the parks standard would be 4.5 acres per 1,000, and the open space standard would be an additional 5.25. So in total, 9.75 acres per 1,000. So today the city is meeting that, actually exceeding that level of service, but using those numbers as benchmarks and projecting forward based on future population projections. It does give guidance to the need for additional active use park space to the tune of about 44 acres by 2035. And just a small number of, I can't see the numbers through the screen, of open space. And I've got it on my chart here as well. Yeah. Thank you. So just a handful, less than a dozen acres for open space. So again, the 5.25 acres per 1,000 for open space really does carry you into the 2030s before there's a real demand for additional open space. But the acreage demand for the park side, that 44 acres, does align pretty well with the gap analysis mapping in terms of the total number of sites we mapped at, 2 to 3 to 4 acres per site. So there's consistency between the two approaches. Another way we looked at level of service was on a more qualitative basis. So the Recreation and Conservation Office, the RCO, offers a level of service model in their manual that jurisdictions are encouraged to use. And this comes through in some grant materials that they then ask for later once you're ready to submit grants. But we looked at feedback we got through the community survey. We looked at how we assessed the site, all of the sites in aggregate as a system, and the distribution mapping piece. And we graded by and also color coded those various features. So the plan talks to this a little bit and gives just additional color to the notion of levels of service, because it shouldn't just be about numerics and how many acres you have of this or that, because it does also involve what the community thinks in terms of levels of satisfaction, level of condition, and then the distribution piece. And then just turning to some of the key recommendations, I've only got a couple more slides here. In terms of key recommendations, one is with regard to filling gaps, partly through that need for future acquisitions going forward, primarily in south and northwest battleground to fill those gaps, but also gaps for connecting the trails together. That's actually on the next slide. Park development and upgrades, making sure that you work toward improving and developing the sites that you've already purchased and own, such as Gardner Oaks, Remy property, and considered the Durkee property, for enhancements to make those sites available and usable for public recreation. Playground replacements, I noted earlier, some of them are getting on in years. So knowing how old they are through this process, we've mapped out sequence for which playground areas should get replaced and when. And also part of that is looking at the opportunity to install an all-inclusive playground in the system. And then looking to add additional amenities, whether it's play structures or picnic areas or shelters, to some of the other parks that have capacity. On the trails and bikeway side, again, making those connections over time through the acquisition of easements or rights of way as appropriate, coordinating with the county for the Chattanooga Railroad project, and aligning this work with the non-motorized transportation action plan to make sure that the on-street connections align with the recreational trail connections. And I've previously mentioned ADA and wayfinding and signage, so I don't feel the need to dive into that. So that effectively gives you a snapshot, a real quick snapshot of the PROS plan. But there is one other element of our work program that involves park impact fees. So as part of the overall project, as we move to compiling the PROS plan document, we also turned our attention to taking a look at an update to the park impact fees. And in working with Sam and other staff, we looked at utilizing, to the extent we could, the material from the 2005 park impact fee methodology, which is the most recent version that you've got. So it is a little dated, but the municipal code is built around that. So we use that as a baseline. And that municipal code material and model is a park impact fee that's calculated based on service standards. So that 5 acres per thousand that I referenced earlier. So your entire park impact fee program basically builds around the acquisition cost and the development cost for that 5 acres per thousand, and calculates a rate based on that. So we use that as a primary model. But in this update, we also provided a second approach, which is around an investments base approach, where we looked at the capital improvement plan for the draft pros plan and said, of those projects, how many are park impact fee eligible? And then use that cost forward to say, with the growth in population, what does that translate into as an impact fee? So I'll get to those numbers in a moment. But as a just real quick reminder, the impact fee calculation is the cost of acquisition and development minus an adjustment factor, because state statute says impact fees cannot pay 100% of new improvement. There needs to be some adjustment. State statute doesn't tell you what that is or how much it should be, but your municipal code has a calculation for that, and we carried that forward in our study. And then basically you have that core cost, and then it's just simple arithmetic from that point forward. You divide by the population growth and multiply by household size to get a multifamily and a single family rate. So as we worked through the process, you can see a set of numbers here that aligns with what we put in our draft park impact fee study. So we've segmented between single family and multifamily rates, 2 different columns. The CAF, cost adjustment factor, is noted. So you can see the 2 different models, the standards-based model, which uses the acres per thousand. And in this case, it's using the updated version of standards, so the 9.75, not the 5 acres per thousand from the old system. And the improvements-based system, which is, again, using the capital improvement plan from the pros plan document. So as you work through the numbers, you can see that the per capita numbers for single family on the standards basis is just shy of 2,800, and the improvements basis is 1,660, give or take. And then as that gets multiplied by the number of people in the household, you get to proposed potential draft park impact fee rates on the 2 unit types. So you can see the pretty big difference between going with a standards basis and going with the capital improvements plan basis model, which is 4,270 for single family. I do also want to note that these numbers are higher than what you're currently assessing on impact fees, and that they are rates that city council can go up to, but city council is not obligated to implement this entire rate in full bore at any one time. You can select to have a lower rate, which is at your discretion, and you can also phase in rates over time. So I just wanted to be clear that this right now is just information. It's not a proposal. And I would let staff add additional information on the impact fee piece when it's appropriate. So with that, actually is the end of my piece. I know that there are others who might want to add comment.
Ladies, we do appreciate you being here as park board members. Would you like a moment? We'll be more than happy. You've been here. We'll give you the moment if you like. If not, we won't force you. Yes, so we can pick you up on the mic, please.
Obviously, and this is Jennifer. I think I'll just say, I think I can speak for us as a board that we found the document to be very thoughtful and kind of we all aligned with it pretty well with your findings. So, and what the community spoke to. So I think we look forward to you guys approving it. So then grants can be sought and funding can come in and we can start moving forward on all that accessibility and inclusivity and connecting trails and all that stuff. So looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you. And yes, sir.
I just have a couple of questions, and this is probably mostly for you, Aaron. Well, for both. When we're determining an open space, I just found out that space by my house and Michelle's old house is considered an open space that the city owns. And I've been back there once and it took a machete and trying to find my kid. I don't know that I would necessarily consider open space or valuable open space for the city. I would consider it undevelopable lands that the city said, that some developer said, I'm not going to mitigate. There's a stream that comes through here in the wintertime, and we left it that way. And it's really, to me, of no value to the community, at least to my neighborhood. There's no place to get into it. You can park on the street and cut your way through, but why do we consider those open spaces versus just like a green belt or something like that you're never gonna do nothing with? It's just your house backs up to it and you see trees.
Go for it. Yeah, based on how you guys pulled that together.
Yeah, it's a great question. And effectively, the classification of open space is remnant open space.
Yeah.
It's the greenway area that is passive. It could be used for trail alignment or viewing wildlife, but it really is land that's left alone. It's not intended for active use space. It's just it's there potentially again as a corridor for wildlife habitat or trails, and it's segmented by the type of land it is as open space, different than park, which is that active use neighborhood community type park.
Because I can see that at Remy, I see, because we can do some stuff at Remy to some educational stuff, some, low impact, wildlife viewing, that kind of stuff. We've a couple kids doing drugs out of there, but that's about it at ours, because it's pretty remote.
And I would think too that, these are on the plan for opportunities to increase the usability of that as well. I mean, we've seen now, joining parks and trails facilities with stormwater facilities and so forth. So I think we have room to improve on some of that open space currently.
Okay. And then the last one, the Durkee property. When it comes to parks, what are the restrictions on the Durkee property for us in parks?
I mean, as far as uses?
Yeah, because I know previously that our previous parks director, we had I don't know where it went. I'm sure we won't be able to ever find it, but we had a design for, a baseball fields, soccer fields, that type of thing, with some pathways, walking pathways around the edge, that kind of stuff. What are the restrictions there? We had them come in, and I'm assuming that would probably not fly for the neighborhood with lights but
Yeah, so we have that property was given to us on a covenant. There are a few restrictions in the covenant ones that we maintain. There's a stand of trees that has to be maintained. And then the family did designate that it has to keep the name and that we have to have some sort of educational piece and trail system through the trees. But the main portion is subject to development by the city.
Because that's, going back to what we talked about earlier with the YMCA for council, is there's a lot of opportunity for us. I'm glad we did this, because now we can move forward with it. But and when you have statistics of, we went out and we asked 600, whatever it was, 650 people, this is what we got, which is a fairly decent sized number for the community. This allows us to build, whether it's not just the impact fees, but whether we want to bond stuff and what that looks like, to put together a parks bond that would be supported by all the different groups in the city, because when you look at the numbers that you gave, everybody wants that. Not every, those are 5% didn't care, but to us 95% is everybody. To us 51% is everybody, really. But we think that, or I think that putting something together as a council with the involvement of the PACE board, with the involvement of the organizations that we have, whether it be YMCA or the different groups. I know me and the former city manager, Mr. Williams, were at AWC when the city of Castle Rock got an award for a community park that they did for mountain biking. And it was all done through community organizations, and they all helped pay for it. They had groups that came in and helped build it. And that's one of the things that we had looked at, possibly even with a property like the Durkee, and we reached out to people and they were interested in it. So I think this gives us an opportunity to put something together that if we would like to go out to bond and go out for a vote for a parks bond, that would give us the ability to help fund these things and to at least make 85% of those 95% happy, hopefully. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Adrian.
Oh, Adrian, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank Michelle and Jennifer, your guys' all your work and the rest of your colleagues on the PACE board. I think on myself, speaking on behalf of myself, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree, we're really appreciative of all the work you guys do. So thank you so much. My question is kind of simple. If you could go to the slide prior to this, I want to make sure I didn't miss something. Maybe I did. When you were talking about the standard base and the improvement base, what is the investment base?
Oh, that's the same thing. It's a typo.
It's a
on the
typo.
screen.
That I thought it was a typo, but I'm like, maybe I missed something. Right?
They're both based off of the capital. improvement
Okay.
plan.
All right. No, thank you so much.
We appreciate the work. I think you and I spoke on the phone for an hour one morning. And so we've been looking for a plan. We've been looking for a plan, haven't we? And now that we have it, along with these numbers here, I believe that we can start moving forward and actually bettering the system so that everyone can feel better about the community and actually get out and do something other than play in the street. So we certainly want more than that. So again, we appreciate your work and we appreciate your work as well. Thank you, sir. And before we move on, I'm just trying to figure out, you three in the back, how badly did you two misbehave to have to come to a city council meeting? Huh? What brings you to see us this evening? Oh, good. Well, it is a pleasure to have you. Your name is? Jackson? Yes. Henry, it's a pleasure to have all three of you here, but especially you two. Thanks for coming and bravo for hanging out with us. Oh, okay. And we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the TBD. And Ms. Erdman, to you.
I'm going to turn it over to our finance director, Ms. Lowry.
Ms. Lowry, to you, obviously.
Good evening, council. So before you is what was voted on at the last meeting to bring forward an ordinance to enact the 0.1% sales tax with the intent of going to the voters November of 2024, and staff recommends passing the ordinance as presented.
Wonderful. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 22-05, the Transportation Benefit District sales tax and use tax of 0.1%.
Second.
Nope. There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Well, we need to read the
Yes,
title
that.
first and then, yes, ma'am, then the pad. Thank you. I always forget that.
Ordinance 22-05, an ordinance of the city of Battle Ground, Washington, imposing an additional sales and use tax of 0.1% within the boundaries of the Battle Ground Transportation Benefit District for the purpose of financing the costs associated with transportation improvements in the district identified herein as authorized by RCW 3673-040, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. And it passes 6-1.
Thank you.
And with that, we will call to order the TBD board that was offered at the beginning of the meeting. So we'll move right into that. And Mr. McCoy, that was your
Yeah, I was
motion, sir.
hoping to, and probably some direction too from city manager on exactly what amount or engineering would need. But what I'd like to do is authorize TBD to be the last dollar in. We can use TIF money or wherever we need to do, but to start the planning process for the Southwest 20th pedestrian or bike path. Perhaps, I guess, probably outside engineering, I'm guessing, because I'm guessing that Mark's team is fairly swamped. So to update the plan that we have so that when the grant does or does not come in December, regardless, we're ready to roll.
May we ask first, Mark, that you have a plan?
Yeah, so we applied for the ped and bike grant. We have a 10% match if we're successful. The grant I put in did include outside consultation rather than inside staff. So the 10% I think was 126,000. So that would be the requirement for the match if we get the grant. And we'll know that December 1st.
And would that be, does the city have a plan for that as we sit here this evening?
We don't have engineering plans, but we have a concept. And so this would be from start to construction. The grant would cover the whole thing, other than the 10% match.
And so if that came in December and the board authorized that to move forward, what time frame would that be? Could the board state at that point that within 60 days, 90 days, whatever days it may be, that the plan be brought back and then the following whatever, the bid be let within 2 or 3 months, whatever, however, I'm asking this a time frame.
Yeah. So the grant, we'll have a good idea of where we sit in December. The grant award won't actually occur until 2022? So 2023. It includes the design and construction funds. So all we would want to do is have that 10% match ready for whenever that grant becomes awarded, which I think will be the middle of 2023 based on kind of previous legislative awards. It would take, depending on environmental, that's because it's right against Remy. So it's probably going to take about a year to get through that process. So construction won't happen until about 2024.
And that would run to Eaton? Is that the city's plan?
It's from 6th Street to Scotton, but it includes the connection of the trail that's in Remy to the new area on 20th.
So even though we have all that, would have all that new Eaton, it would not go that extra.
Yeah, it's only the first half because that's where we get the most requests is to get to the shopping that's on Scotton.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So the total project of that is 1.2 million.
Yeah, that includes all the design and all the construction. With obviously it's a 30,000 foot estimate, so it has quite a bit of contingency in it.
What on the grant itself does the grant? So, I mean, when you're saying 2024 and we're sitting in 2022 and we apply for a grant in 2022 based on 2022's numbers, by the time we build it in 2024, what percentage will we have to come up with, do you think?
It'll be the same. I put it way high. It's got contingency built in. So I covered quite a bit of inflationary.
Okay. So, but if you covered that, let's say, for example, in 2024, that it's the same as it is today, can we continue? Can we do more than that?
No, typically you have to stay
Only
within the
your
scope. So if you have extra, it just that matching percentage will stay. So city will always do 10%, the grant will always do 90. That's just city spends less, the grant spends less, and it goes back for future grants.
Okay.
Anyone else, again, as the TBD board, does anyone else have any questions of what?
Based on what I'm hearing, I'm seeing no reason to
Just wait for the grant.
Just wait till December and see what happens. Okay. And then, so could we authorize the 100 grand just to go ahead and get the work,
What she's saying is we would authorize a budget committee to, if we're not successful with the grant, to budget the project regardless, either the 122,000 or the 1.2 million.
well, what I was asking though was just to go ahead and get started on the planning part of this so that we don't have to wait so long.
So if you go early, none of that's reimbursable. So you have to have the grant authorization in place before you can start counting your costs. So if you go early, you won't get that.
So if
back.
we show up with a plan, that doesn't count.
You'll be able to do the construction piece, but you'll lose the engineering piece because y'all have done the work before the.
Well, yeah, you hate
grant's
to think
authorized.
that you pre-planned anything. Well,
But we
that's
can wait till December. We
that's
can
the-
wait till December and find out. if
Yeah,
we
I mean,
get
that
the
would
grant.
be my theory.
the old
is
codger in me.
Look
I
at it for
apologize.
the budget, see where you're at. You know, you could have a placeholder in the budget for both scenarios. The one scenario where we get the grant, and then the one scenario if we do want to fund it wholly on ourselves, and then we'll know, should have a good idea in December.
Wonderful. Any other questions? And then again, Ms. Lowry, the collection of that, if we read your email correct, would be starting on the first day of January of 2023. Wonderful. And they pay that how? Every quarter? Okay. So it will
have a
roll
2-month
into our
lag.
TBD account at the end of January, February, yada, yada. Wonderful. I see no other questions. We'll dismiss the TBD board and we'll move on. Which is the final thing this evening was I sent to everyone the Spokane Valley ordinance on homeless folks. We hear from the city and we see online from the city where the city is telling folks there's nothing we can do. That's not true. And so we need to have the folks in code and we need to have the folks in the police department brought up to at least a little bit of stature, whether we, as we start working on something like this or on what we have ourselves, as just because you live on one of our streets for a year does not give you the deed to the street. And so we need to start working with, and I would ask the city to contact the city of Vancouver and see if we could use the services of their homeless outreach person, Miss Spinelli, to see if she could come one evening and give us kind of their look-see at this. They obviously have a bigger issue than we do, but they also have a carrot and a stick plan as well. So we should ask to see if we can make use of her. And I would ask that we take a look at what the city of Spokane Valley has done here, run it through our legal folks, take what's there so that we need to have something better than it ain't our business. And it just, we can't continue that way. If we have folks living in wherever they're living in, if they're on private property, we need to set code straight that it happens. If you're camping on private property, then if you're a homeless person, but if you 3 blocks down, you have someone camping because they're letting their son live there in a camper, that's camping if they're living in a trailer. So we will have to come up with some sort of equalization so that, yeah, everyone faces the same thing. So I assume everyone looked at Spokane Valley. We of course have time to look at it again as we go through. But I would like for us to kind of give Ms. Erdman the okay to look at this, use this as a basis. There are others out there as well. The city of Seattle has one, but I don't know that we need 47 pages and all of that. The smaller cities, I think, are where we should be heading. Does anyone have any problems with that? And Ms. Walters?
I'm good with going forward with researching this. The only thing that I would caution is that there are some Eighth Amendment issues that we may need to keep in mind when we're drafting anything up, because they will, the ACLU will come and do their thing with us if we don't have our ducks in a row. So
Well, exactly. And these folks have been working now for 3 or 4 years on this document. So I assume they've met those people if they needed to or had to. Well,
No, not in Spokane.
Not in Spokane. Yeah, not.
It's Spokane.
It's Spokane County. Yeah,
It's
no.
the same.
Right next to Spokane.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm supportive of moving forward, giving city manager direction and move forward on researching this. But I would like, when we do get this presented to us, I would like the city attorney to be here in person so we can pepper him with questions.
Certainly.
That we may have, so.
Certainly. We can work on that. Okay, doke. Any other questions?
Can I just,
Yes, sir.
I just don't want us to spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel. I mean, it's already been invented. And if we need to reach out to Spokane Valley and their attorney and find out, I think that, this is something that we can take Spokane Valley out, put battleground. It's 2 words also. And be good. So thank you.
And truthfully, this is already on the radar screen for the annual code for this year, and I have a file with some sample ordinances, with this being one of them that we've already chatted with a few attorneys, so it's in the works.
Perfect. Seeing no other questions, we'll move to the administrative reports.
Right, thank you, Mayor Johnson. I just have one this evening. Last week, the PACE Board at their meeting was presented with a plan to do a 10-hole course at Kiwanis Park for disc golf. They moved forward with approval of that. It's completely 100% donation. They had approached the Parks Board and they kind of went through, he's actually, I think I could pull up the plan here with that. So what they're proposing is to add the nets in and do kind of a 10-course disc golf at Kiwanis Park, kind of staying to the outskirts on the edge. It wouldn't have any impact with the city budget or with construction or anything. This is going to be fully donation from the community group that's putting this together. So I just wanted to run this by you, see if you guys are okay with accepting this donation to have this put in. I know they were going to reach out to Mr. Herseg after their meeting, make sure there wasn't any issues with maintenance. I'm not 100% sure that's happened yet. I know you.
Yeah, I've got the info. We just haven't had a chance to
Just to look at it. So we'll definitely dive into that, make sure that whatever we do put in won't cause any maintenance issues for the operations crew.
Or stand in the way of any field sports.
Yeah, and they've done a good job of kind of keeping this around the outside so that we could still do those rentals within the middle of the field.
Does anyone see any issue with the golf plan?
Now, as long as the city gets those questions answered in terms of maintenance and.
Let's move forward.
Okay, we'll do.
Perfect.
That concludes administrative reports.
Council communications, are there any? Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a motion to suspend the rules for the 10:30 cutoff, since we have to go into an executive session and we may go past 10:30.
Is there a second?
There's a second, but I'd just like to point out, this is the second meeting we've gone past 10 o'clock, Mr. Mayor.
In a row.
In a row. I'm not coming next month.
I'm not suggesting anything, but.
Well, the motion on the floor is to suspend the rules, and there's a second. Is there any discussion?
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, you should have said something there. We would have at least marked that down. Moving on, pursuant to RCW 40.42.30.110, the city council of the city of Battle Ground will enter an executive session to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by purchase or lease due to the likelihood that disclosure would increase the price. RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses B, for a period starting at 20 minutes. And the time currently is 3 minutes after 10. We will start that at 8 minutes after 10.
I need to get that computer loaded. So can you give me a yes?
We'll
Yeah.
start that meeting then at 10 minutes after 10.
Okay. And then we
And-
need to designate the return time.
Yes.
10:30.
Instead of- okay.
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
Dude, I'm sorry everywhere.
Oh, I did.
Oh, that's what I got. You just said just waiting.
Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't quite sure whether that was going to change based upon you going back.
Forget more about news.
I've been trying to call you since 3 o'clock this morning, because I knew you were up.
All my little old ladies that I
Have to go to work.
Yeah.
fix her stuff today. My water heater's too hot. So I
Put more cold on.
I turned it down,
Right.
turned it down. Called me about 4 or 5 hours later. I'm washing the dishes. and it just doesn't- So I just went out there and really just didn't even turn it. Oh, I believe there we go. Good job. Yeah, thank you.
So you have to do this.
Yeah, because
Go from B to C.
it's 125.
Cancel.
That's.
I was
that's
being
solid,
like
really.
fair, like
Someone
with
did
some
that.
other people.
Yeah, so I-
And we made it to
okay,
one
fine.
time, and
You're
then
good to go.
the second time I was a little more generous. with that. All right.
Have some cookies. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
That's payment.
My daughter has figured out
Yeah.
that she's gotten very polite.
And then there's people all around.
She says,
It'll come her way.
So she says,
Freaking out, what if they
Mommy,
don't-
I want a cookie.
So,
Lauren
but by
says,
the time
"You
they
have
were
to
out again,
eat
they were
first.
kind of.
Please, I'm like, come here. Lauren's like, don't you dare give her.
But they were so
But she
excited
said,
when they
"Please."
saw we had kids.
It's 10:30. We're back in session. Is there a motion to be made?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move that the city be authorized to make a counteroffer on the proposed acquisition.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. See you on the 1st of August.